Chapter 377. The power of the saber shattering all directions was indeed terrifying. It instantly shattered all of Murong Yu's attacks into powder. However, such a powerful move also meant that the user would have to expend a lot of energy. As a matter of fact, the leader of the Immortals hurriedly retreated after using this move. His chest heaved up and down violently as he panted heavily. Murong Yu even saw him take out an immortal meridian and swallow it directly. He must have expended a lot of energy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have swallowed an entire immortal meridian. Seeing this, Murong Yu sneered. He took a step forward and charged directly at the leader of the Immortals. Now that the leader of the Immortals had expended a lot of energy, it was the perfect time to beat him up. Murong Yu definitely wouldn't let go of this opportunity. Murong Yu's figure flickered as he executed the troop formula and disappeared from where he stood. They had been fighting for a full day now. During this time, Murong Yu had been using the battle formula. Because of the battle formula, Murong Yu's strength had increased by 30% compared to his previous peak. In other words, with the support of the battle formula, Murong Yu's strength was 30% stronger than when he was at his peak. Originally, Murong Yu's strength was about the same as the leader of the Immortals. Now that his strength had increased by 30%, the leader of the Immortals was gradually not his match. The stronger Murong Yu was, the more terrifying his speed was. With a swoosh, Murong Yu had already appeared not far in front of the leader of the Immortals. He reached out his hand and pressed it against the leader's chest. If he pressed his palm against the leader's chest, even if the leader was an exalted immortal, he would most likely be slapped to death. Of course, the leader of the Immortals was aware of this. Therefore, the moment Murong Yu made his move, he ruthlessly slashed his saber, shattering the firmament at Murong Yu. At the same time, his body swayed, and he was about to retreat. The slash just now had expended a lot of his energy that he hadn't recovered yet. At this moment, he only had less than 40% of his strength left. Even though he had swallowed an entire immortal meridian, it was still difficult for him to refine all of the immortal meridian's power to replenish his own. Now, he only needed enough time to replenish his strength before he could fight Murong Yu again. However, how could Murong Yu given the chance to recover? Outer Lion's Seal. Murong Yu let out a furious roar. After shattering the blade beam unleashed by the leading immortal with a single punch, he pushed forward with both hands and roared at the same time. Rumble. Instantly, a fist-sized, lion-like handprint formed between Murong Yu's hands. Then, with a roar, it tore through the void and pounced at the leading immortal. The outer lion seal expanded rapidly in the wind. The lion-like existence opened its bloody mouth and bit down viciously at the immortal leader. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying pressure emanated from the outer lion seal, intimidating everyone. The leading immortal's heart trembled. Ignoring the fact that he hadn't recovered his strength, he let out a furious roar and once again slashed out with the saber, shattering all directions in an attempt to shatter the incoming outer lion seal. Rumble. After an earth-shattering explosion, the void within 100 million miles was shattered. Puffed. The leading immortal was sent flying as if he had suffered a heavy blow. In the process, he spat out blood. At this moment, although his saber shattering all directions had shattered hundreds of millions of voids, it couldn't shake the outer lion seal at all. The power of the outer lion seal exceeded everyone's expectations, including Murong Yu's. The moment the two forces collided, the outer lion seal let out a formless roar. It opened its bloody mouth and swallowed the saber, shattering all directions. After swallowing the saber, shattering all directions, the outer lion seal didn't stop. Instead, it rushed forward at an extremely fast speed and slammed into the leading immortal. The leading immortal coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. The immortal artifact, defensive immortal robe on his body, was completely shattered by the impact of the outer lion seal. Even so, his physical body was severely injured. Countless shocking cracks appeared on his body. Even a few of the bones inside were broken. Unfortunately, the outer lion seal also shattered after smashing into the opponent's immortal artifact. After all, Murong-Yu wasn't strong enough. Otherwise, the outer lion seal could have killed the leading immortal directly. Kill. At the same time as he used the outer lion seal, Murong-Yu suddenly felt a sense of emptiness in his body. In shock, he suddenly realized that half of his strength had been drained. The outer lion seal was more powerful than the great Vajrachakra seal. At the same time, its consumption was also more terrifying. Fortunately, Murong-Yu had the Tree of Life. With half of his strength consumed, the billions of roots of the Tree of Life swayed wildly. Suddenly, an incomparably pure, chaotic energy flowed out from the Tree of Life like a vast ocean. It quickly replenished Murong-Yu's meridians, allowing him to quickly recover his consumed strength. Seeing this scene, Murong-Yu knew that he didn't need to worry about the problem of energy consumption at all. Now, he only needed to take the opportunity to kill the leading immortal. Murong-Yu let out a low roar and charged forward, sending a punch at the leading immortal. The leading immortal was furious. He slashed out with his saber and slashed at Murong-Yu's fist. After an earth-shattering explosion, the leading immortal was shocked until his palm was bleeding. He was actually knocked back. On the other hand, Murong-Yu's strength was getting stronger. His body only shook slightly. On one hand, he was severely injured, his strength was greatly depleted, and his strength decreased. On the other hand, his strength was constantly increasing. As the situation worsened, the leader of the immortals was in even more danger. If the leading immortal didn't have any ultimate moves, or only had this ability, he would only be killed today. Murong-Yu swung his arm, which had gone numb from the impact. A sharp pain traveled from his fist. When he looked down, he realized that his fist was bleeding profusely. The leading immortal saber was a 5th-grade immortal weapon. Murong-Yu's body was only a 4th-grade immortal weapon. With his body, it was still quite difficult for him to take a 5th-grade immortal weapon head-on. If it wasn't for the support of strength, Murong-Yu's entire arm would have been crippled. Since I can't take you head-on, then I'll use strength to kill you. Murong-Yu was ruthless in his heart. One by one, the great Vajrachakra seals were sent out. During this process, the Dragon Elephant Prajna technique and the Tiger Roar Imperial Fist were repeatedly used. The sky and earth split, the sun and moon lost their light, and the stars shook. The leading immortal's face was ashen. He spat out blood, and the injuries on his body were getting worse. Looking at Murong-Yu, who was getting more and more energetic, and compared it to himself, who was getting more and more dispirited, the leading immortal's face finally revealed a look of fear. If this continued, he would definitely die today. No matter what, I can't die. The leading immortal kept roaring in his heart. The longer one lived, the more they didn't want to die. The leading immortal's desire to not die was even stronger. Saber shattering 10 directions. The leading immortal roared again. Using all his strength, he slashed out the saber, shattering 10 directions. He shattered the power of Murong-Yu's attack, and even forced Murong-Yu to retreat. In fact, a moment of carelessness caused Murong-Yu's body to be shattered. Even though his body was a 4th-grade immortal weapon, there were still shocking wounds on it. Fresh blood flowed out. The Tree of Life flowed out quickly. Green life force quickly healed Murong-Yu's wounds. It allowed his wounds to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, Murong-Yu was also very angry. Murong-Yu, you are very strong, but you'd better stay in the cultivation world forever and not ascend. Otherwise, when you ascend to the immortal world, not only will you die, but all of you will die. All of Shenzhen's people will die. The leading immortal's saber shattered the sky and the void, creating a passage between the cultivation world and the immortal world, shattering the void and ascending. In the cultivation world, anyone who had completely transformed their immortal body and reached the heavenly immortal realm could ascend to the immortal world. There were 2 ways to ascend to the immortal world. One was to climb the stairway to heaven again and open the gate of immortality to the nearest immortal world. The gate of immortality now was different from the one during the 4 and 9 heavenly tribulation. During the 4-9 heavenly tribulation, the gate of immortality was extremely difficult to open because they had not reached the heavenly immortal realm and were not qualified to enter the immortal world. After reaching the heavenly immortal realm, the gate of immortality would no longer block the attacks of immortals. It could be opened with a push, allowing the heavenly immortal realm cultivator to ascend to the immortal world. Other than that, there was another way to ascend to the immortal world, shattering the void. However, shattering the void was not that easy. Even if one reached the heavenly immortal realm, shattering the void was extremely difficult. Therefore, in the cultivation world, very few people used this method to ascend. At this moment, the leading immortal's strength was in the exalted immortal realm, but he could shatter the void with a single saber strike. Moron, could do it too. Then you'll die first. Moron was furious. What he hated most in his life was to use the people around him to threaten him. He only had one way to deal with people who threatened him, and that was to kill them. As he spoke, the leading immortal had already shot into the sky, entered the passage, and fled toward the immortal world. After he entered the passage, it disappeared at an extremely fast speed. I'm going to kill this bastard. If I enter the immortal world because of this, don't ascend for the time being. I'll be back. Especially Shenzhen's disciples, don't ascend. Wait for me to return. Murong Yu's voice rang in the ears of Li Ling and the others, and Murong Yu had already rushed into the passage with a teleportation. Woof! Lord Heavenly Dog is also going to return to the immortal world. The large black dog barked loudly and teleported into the passage as well. He was actually going to ascend to the immortal world with Murong Yu. Murong Yu couldn't help but glare at the large black dog. He could only grab him and bring him to the Hichu Luoshu world. As for himself, he began to chase after the leader of the immortals. This person must be killed. Chapter 378. Apart from the large black dog who'd followed Murong Yu into the passageway, no one else followed. Even the little Pung King didn't follow. Before long, as Murong Yu and the others disappeared, the passageway to the immortal realm vanished as well. Space returned to normal. Murong Yu ascended to the immortal realm. Just like that, Li Su and the others didn't leave. They simply looked at the restored space and sighed. Even they didn't know why they were sighing. But in the end, they left. Li Ling and the others returned to Shenzhen as well. In the following days, no one from Shenzhen ascended to the immortal realm. These people were absolutely loyal to Murong Yu. Since Murong Yu had told them not to ascend, they naturally wouldn't go against Murong Yu's words and secretly ascend. Li Su and the others didn't ascend either. After all, the words of the leader of the immortals had been a bit threatening. They were the most outstanding experts in the cultivation world. They were almost invincible in the cultivation world. But what about the immortal realm? They were the weakest sky immortals. In front of those immortals, they were nothing more than ants. If they really did ascend, the Black Civ sect would probably wipe them all out. Within the palace on Heaven's End Peak, the enforcer looked helpless. That guy ascended to the immortal realm just like that? Doesn't that mean I'll have to continue being the enforcer? No, I have to give in the position as enforcer as soon as possible. When Murong Yu had killed so many immortals, the enforcer had watched from afar. When he saw Murong Yu enter the passageway to the immortal realm, he'd wanted to stop Murong Yu, but in the end hadn't stopped him. Given Murong Yu's personality, if he'd stopped him from ascending and continued to pursue the leader of the immortals, he'd probably immediately fall out with the enforcer. However, the enforcer didn't seem to be in a hurry. Was he completely certain that Murong Yu would return to the cultivation world? The immortal world. Unlike the cultivation world, the immortal realm was hundreds of millions of times larger than the Huaxia cultivation world. Even the most powerful immortals didn't know how big the immortal realm was. At some point in time, the world of immortals had been divided into 1,000,000 great continents. The 1,000,000 continents were the places where immortals were most active. Of course, this didn't include the entire immortal world. There was an even vaster world outside. However, those places were deserted and filled with danger. It was extremely terrifying. Even if ordinary immortals went on adventures, they would rarely go to those places. Even between each province, there were endless dangers and opportunities. This was because every state was many times larger than the Huaxia cultivation world. Jiang Prefecture was a remote prefecture among the millions of prefectures in the immortal world. However, even though Jiang Prefecture was a large and remote prefecture, there were still many immortals here. There were also various sects and forces that were as numerous as the grains of sand in the Ganges. The Luotian sect was one of the more powerful sects among the numerous sects in Jiangzhou. It was said that Luotian sect had a perfected golden immortal overseeing it and was extremely powerful. A sect with only a perfected golden immortal overseeing it could only be considered a mediocre force in the cultivation world. Of course, this was in comparison to giants like the Immortal Palace. In front of giants like the Immortal Palace, sects like the Luotian sect and the Black Sieve sect were trash. However, the Luotian sect was a major force in a remote prefecture like Jiang Prefecture. In Jiang Prefecture, almost no one dared to provoke the Luotian sect. The Luotian sect only had a perfected golden immortal overseeing it. Within Jiang Prefecture, there are also many sects with perfected golden immortals overseeing it. However, the Luotian sect had an unclear relationship with the Profound sect, a giant sect in Jiang Prefecture. The Profound sect was definitely a giant in Jiang Prefecture. Its strength suppressed all the other sects in Jiang Prefecture. Luotian sect, the Forbidden Area in the Back Mountain. There was a huge lake in the Forbidden Area. White mist rose all day long. It was an enormous hot spring. However, this hot spring was different from ordinary hot springs. It was said that this hot spring had the effect of cleansing the mind and soul, tempering the body, and consolidating one's realm. However, anyone who soaked in this hot spring would greatly reduce the chances of qi deviation. It was because of this hot spring that the Luotian sect established a relationship with the giant Profound sect in Jiang Prefecture. Today, a big shot from the Profound sect came to the Luotian sect. He wanted to use the Luotian sect's hot spring to break through his realm. No one in the Luotian sect dared to neglect the Profound sect. They strictly prohibited any disciples from entering the Forbidden Area. Even the sect master of the Luotian sect, Kong Shani, personally guarded outside the Forbidden Area. This was because he knew that he could not afford to offend the big shot who was running the hot spring. Otherwise, their Luotian sect would be annihilated. The hot spring, in fact, was called a hot spring. It was more like a huge lake like the sea. It had a radius of 100,000 miles. White mist lingered above the hot spring all day long. At this moment, in the hot spring, there was a smooth body soaking in the hot spring. He was sitting cross-legged in the hot spring, cultivating. This person was the big shot from the Profound sect. In the entire hot spring, even in the entire forbidden area of the Luotian sect, there was not a single disciple of the Luotian sect. Except for the sect master of the Luotian sect, Kong Shani, and the people brought by the big shot. Even so, they only dared to spread out outside the forbidden area. They did not dare to get too close to the forbidden hot spring. Boom! At this moment, a door appeared out of thin air above the hot spring. Then, a figure leaped out of the door and plunged into the hot spring with a splash. Immortal sect! Kong Shani exclaimed when he heard the earth-shattering sound. This kind of immortal sect was very common. Usually, it would appear when a cultivator from the lower realm broke through the void and ascended to the immortal realm. These cultivators who broke through the void and ascended did not have a fixed location. In other words, these cultivators who broke through the void and ascended to the immortal realm could appear anywhere in the immortal realm. Of course, it was impossible for them to appear in certain special places. Which bastard ascended earlier or later? Why did he have to ascend now? Kong Shani was furious. If it was in the past, Kong Shani would be overjoyed if someone from the cultivation world ascended to the Luotian sect. He would think of ways to recruit them into his sect. After all, Someone who could ascend in such a harsh place like the cultivation world was definitely a genius. But today, this person appeared in the hot spring. At the thought of the existence in the hot spring, Kong Shani's eyes could not help but emit murderous intent. With a sway of his body, he was about to rush over and kill this person before he offended that big shot. Perhaps this was the only way that the big shot would not vent his anger on his sect. But soon he steadied himself. Otherwise, he would have taken a step forward. If he rushed into the hot spring now, he would definitely die. Whoosh! Just as Kong Shani was gnashing his teeth and feeling uneasy, another figure shot out of the door that had yet to disappear. Two people? Kong Shani's face instantly turned pale. At the thought of the big shot's anger, Kong Shani wanted to turn around and run away. Bastard! How dare you threaten me? Even if you escape to the immortal realm, I will hunt you down and kill you. A voice full of murderous intent came from the hot spring. Then, with a plop, the second person who ascended fell straight into the hot spring. Damn it! He's chasing after someone? Bastard, if you're not killed by that big shot, I will definitely hunt you down and kill you. Kong Shani could not help but curse loudly. Two people had ascended to the hot spring one after another, and this person's words were like thunder. He was afraid that the big shot had already been alerted. If that big shot was angry then, Kong Shani's mind went blank. He could only hope that the big shot would be magnanimous and not be calculative with these people and the Luotian sect. But was that possible? Kong Shani knew that it was impossible. The two people who ascended from the cultivation world one after another were none other than Murong Yu and the leading immortal. Is there a flight restriction here? Murong Yu had just rushed out of the passage and shouted when his entire body involuntarily fell from the sky into the hot spring. No, it's not a flight restriction. The pressure here is too great. It's thousands or even tens of thousands of times more than the pressure in the cultivation world. If those transformation stage cultivators from the cultivation world rashly enter the immortal world, I'm afraid they'll be crushed immediately. That's not right either. If the pressure in the immortal world is so great, then these immortals' bodies should be very strong. It's just that those immortals' bodies are not that great. Murong Yu was somewhat puzzled. What Murong Yu did not know was that although the pressure in the immortal world was greater than that in the cultivation world, it was not so terrifying that it would directly crush the transformation stage cultivators' bodies. The reason why he felt this way was entirely due to the rules of the immortal world. Anyone who was not from the immortal world would feel this way when they first entered the immortal world. If one wanted to establish a foothold in the immortal world and continue to cultivate, then they had to be recognized by the immortal world. Generally, those who ascended would only need a period of time to adapt to the immortal world's rules before they were recognized by the immortal world. This water seems to be a bit special. As soon as Murong Yu entered the hot spring, he felt an inexplicable force seeping into his limbs and bones, giving him a sense of clarity. Even his soul seemed to be much purer. This is a good place, but now it's more important to chase after the leader of the immortals. Murong Yu took out a jade slip of a ray formation and threw it into the lake. Then he was about to soar into the air and spread out his divine thought in an attempt to find the leader of the immortals. However, in the next moment, Murong Yu's expression suddenly changed. This was because he realized that he could not fly. In addition, he also discovered that his divine thought had been suppressed to an extremely small area. There's movement over there. Let's go take a look first, Murong Yu said to himself. Then, he used the army formula and quickly ran over the hot spring. Chapter 379. What is this? Although he couldn't fly, Murong Yu's speed wasn't slow either. He stepped on the surface of the water and soon appeared at the place where he vaguely sensed something strange. A clean, sparkling, naked body sat cross-legged on the surface of the water, revealing the upper half of her body. When he saw this naked body in front of him, Murong Yu had a bad feeling. It was indeed a person, but this person wasn't the leader of the immortals that Murong Yu was looking for. The leader of the immortals seemed to have fled in this direction. However, Murong Yu didn't notice at this time. A beauty had come out of the bath. Seeing this scene, Murong didn't absolutely believe that this was a lucky break. Instead, he cursed in his heart. He instantly turned around and quickly rushed into the distance. This was the immortal world. Anyone he met could be stronger than him. Although Murong only glanced at this woman, he couldn't tell how strong she was at all. In other words, this person was definitely stronger than him. It wasn't a good thing that he accidentally saw a beauty coming out of the bath. Even if she wasn't an enemy, she was now an enemy. Therefore, Murong didn't say anything and turned to flee. Little brother, since you're here, stay and accompany big sister. At this moment, a voice that could make one's bones go soft traveled into Murong's ears. At the same time, a strong sense of danger rose in Murong's heart. At the same time, a terrifying aura shot out from behind him at high speed. Murderous intent surged and filled the air. I'm your grandfather. Murong's expression changed. This unknown expert had already wanted to kill Murong. Murong could already feel the terrifying murderous intent that the other party didn't hide at all. Run! Murong's first thought was to escape from this place. At this time, how could he care about chasing after the leader of the Immortals? Moreover, the leader of the Immortals also appeared nearby. He should have been killed by this woman long ago, right? Murong immediately raised his strength to the limit and secretly used the battle word art to strengthen his strength. At the same time, he also used the soldier word art to the limit and flew into the distance. In the immortal world, without the golden immortal realm, one didn't even have the right to fly, let alone teleport. However, when Murong displayed his maximum speed, he still managed to cover a distance of several tens of thousands of miles in an instant. An immortal in the early stage of the sky, immortal realm, could teleport tens of thousands of miles? Seeing how terrifying Murong's speed was, the woman who came out of the bath could not help but exclaim. However, although she was surprised, her murderous intent was even more intense. Murong crossed tens of thousands of miles in a single step, but he still couldn't shake off the woman's attack. On the contrary, he felt the woman's zest. Her speed was above his. Murong was overwhelmed with shock. His speed abruptly increased as he shot forward. At the same time, he scanned with his divine thought and saw that not far behind him, a jade finger pierced through the sky and quickly pointed at him. The jade finger was not big, but contained an extremely terrifying power. Murong believed that if his body, which was a grade 4 immortal artifact, was touched by this jade finger, his body would probably explode. This woman's strength must be above the exalted immortal realm. Is she a golden immortal? Or an even higher profound immortal? Murong was shocked and angry. At the same time, he secretly sighed at his bad luck. He did not expect to meet such a strong enemy as soon as he ascended to the immortal world. How unlucky! Did he have to escape through Hichu Luoshu as soon as he ascended to the immortal world? However, Murong did not think of escaping through Hichu Luoshu. After all, this was the immortal world where there were many strong people. Once he exposed Hichu Luoshu, it would be difficult for him to establish himself in the immortal world. Moreover, most importantly, even if he escaped into the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo, would he be able to escape from these experts? Would they follow him into Hichu Luoshu? Hundreds of thoughts flashed through his mind. It took a long time to describe, but it all happened in an instant. No, my speed is far inferior to this woman's. Murong roared in his heart. Then, he turned around and attacked with both hands. Great Vajra Wheel Seal. Lion Seal. Dark Devil Prajna. In an instant, Murong attacked with his 3 most powerful moves in an attempt to stop the woman's attack. Little brother, looks like your strength is not bad. However, you won't be able to escape. The bone-numbing voice rang out, causing Murong's hair to stand on end. Bang, bang, bang. The woman didn't seem to make any movements, but her slender finger pointed at Murong's back. The 3 moves that Murong had unleashed with all his might couldn't even withstand a single blow from this jade-like finger. They were instantly shattered and weren't even able to block this jade-like finger. Her slender fingers were still pointing at Murong Yu's back at an incomparably fast speed. Before the slender fingers reached him, Murong Yu could already feel that his body was beginning to crack under the pressure of his opponent's terrifying strength. The woman's strength was so terrifying. No matter who you are, if you want to kill me, you will have to pay the price. As long as I don't die today, you will die in the future, Murong Yu roared. At the same time, he summoned Hichu Luoshu and wrapped it around his body. He also summoned the Yin-Yang cauldron, which floated above his head. Yin-Yang fire rained down and enveloped him firmly. Chi! Just as Murong Yu summoned the Yin-Yang cauldron, her slender fingers still pressed on Murong Yu's back and pressed into the Yin-Yang fire. The Yin-Yang fire was indeed a terrifying flame that could burn the world. Even an immortal could not resist the power of the Yin-Yang fire. Although the woman's strength was very strong, even surpassing that of a golden immortal, she was caught off guard. The moment her slender fingers touched the Yin-Yang fire, they made an unpleasant sound and were burned to ashes. Oomph! The moment her slender fingers were burned by the Yin-Yang fire, the woman in the hot spring could not help but groan and frown. The slender fingers that were chasing Murong Yu disappeared instantly. At this time, the woman who had just come out of the bath was staring at her slender fingers in a daze. She saw that her originally sparkling and translucent jade-like fingers were now missing a section. The broken section was even smoking, and an unpleasant burnt smell wafted into the woman's nose. The woman was a peerless beauty, and she was most satisfied with every part of her body. She had always been pursuing perfection, but now a section of her slender fingers had been burned off. "Ah, bastard, I must kill you." A high-pitched scream came from the depths of the hot spring, accompanied by a terrifying, murderous intent that could destroy the heavens and the earth. At this moment, the entire Luotian sect was shrouded by the murderous intent that erupted from the woman. Everyone trembled with fear on their faces, and some who were not mentally strong enough even prostrated themselves on the ground. One could imagine how terrifying this woman's strength was. One must know that although the Luotian sect was only a mediocre sect, the weakest among them was at the immortal realm. All of them were immortals, not cultivators from the cultivation world. Hearing this high-pitched scream, Kong Shani, the sect master of the Luotian sect, trembled and almost fell to the ground in fright. Which bastard had caused this big shot to be so furious? Kong Shani's face was ashen. He knew that if he did not handle this matter well today, the Luotian sect might vanish into thin air. Whoosh! At this moment, a figure suddenly rushed out of the forbidden area. "It's this bastard!" Kong Shani was furious. He shouted angrily, opened his big hand, and grabbed at Murong Yu fiercely. Another expert. Murong Yu was shocked and angry, but he did not slow down. He just took out the Yin-Yang cauldron and collided with Kong Shani's big hand. "Bastard, go to hell!" Kong Shani was furious and slapped the Yin-Yang cauldron. Even though he saw the Yin-Yang fire, he did not care about it. Chi! Wherever the Yin-Yang fire passed, everything was burned. Even the attack of a golden immortal could not be a fluke. Kong Shani's power was immediately incinerated, which shocked Kong Shani. Murong Yu controlled the Yin-Yang cauldron to attack Kong Shani. Kong Shani was shocked and involuntarily retreated. At this moment, Murong Yu took advantage of this opportunity and quickly shot forward. Whoosh! 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 Murong Yu operated the fighting formula and the army formula to the extreme. His speed became more and more terrifying. Finally, after a few teleportations, he was far away from the Luotian sect. "You bastards, I'm Suda, a disciple of the Black Sieve sect. How dare you attack a disciple of the Black Sieve sect? I'll remember you. In the future, I'll bring experts to flatten you." Murong Yu's voice spread far and wide, but he had already disappeared. Oh no! Seeing Murong Yu disappear from his sight, Kong Shani came to his senses. He rose into the air and chased after Murong Yu. Whoosh! At this moment, a beautiful woman with a frosty face and murderous aura flew out of the forbidden area. She was also a golden immortal. Where is he? The beautiful woman looked at Kong Shani with murderous intent. Kong Shani's expression changed. He ran away. Trash! The beautiful woman shouted angrily. Then she rose into the air and chased after Murongyu. Kong Shani did not dare to be negligent. He followed the woman. Chapter 380. The beautiful woman chased after Murongyu with Kong Shani, searching the area around the Luotian sect. However, she could not find any trace of him. Trash! Seeing that her finger had been burned off, the stunning woman couldn't help but become furious. Kong Shani, who was next to her, was submissive and uneasy. The Black Civ sect. Kong Shani, find out who this person is immediately. No matter what his background is, you must find him and kill him. The beautiful woman said angrily. Murongyu had not only seen her naked body, but also burned her finger. How could she not be angry? Kong Shani hesitated for a moment, then finally said, Madam, this kid should have ascended from the lower realm. How could he be from the Black Civ sect? Who cares about his identity? You better find out who he is. Otherwise, there is no need for the Luotian sect to exist. The beautiful woman looked at Kong Shani with murderous intent. Then, with a flash, she rose into the air and flew back in the direction of the Luotian sect. Kong Shani's eyes flashed, and his face was extremely gloomy. The Luotian sect was his sect. Now that they were being threatened like this, no one would be happy. However, the Black Sect was much more powerful than the Luotian sect. If the Black Sect wanted to destroy the Luotian sect, Kong Shani could only watch as the sect was destroyed. If I can break through my current realm, so what if it is the Black Sect? Kong Shani was determined. He was now a perfected golden immortal. If he could break through this realm, he could become a nine heavens Xian immortal. At that time, even the Black Sect would not dare to do anything to the Luotian sect. However, how could it be so easy to break through to the next realm? Otherwise, there would not be so many sects in the immortal realm. Hichu Luo Shu. A shadow flashed, and a figure rushed in. Cough, cough. This person was none other than Murongyu. The instant he entered the He-Tu and Luo Shu, he fell straight to the ground, creating a huge human-shaped crater in the ground. Cough, cough. Is this the power of a perfected golden immortal? Murongyu's face was still filled with lingering fear. As he spoke, he kept coughing up blood. This time, because the beautiful woman and Kong Shani were caught off guard, they were suppressed and forced to retreat by the yin-yang fire. It was because of this that Murongyu was able to escape. However, even so, Murongyu was still heavily injured. Although the stunning woman and Kong Shani's attacks didn't get close to Murongyu's body, their attacks still didn't land on him. However, Murongyu was still unable to withstand the shockwaves. Even his grade 4 immortal artifact fleshly body had many ghastly cracks. The blood and chi in Murongyu's body was shaken to the point that it started to churn like a tidal wave. The strength of a golden immortal was so terrifying. If he didn't have the yin-yang cauldron and the yin-yang fire, he probably wouldn't have been able to escape from their pursuit. Even with the Hichu Luo Shu, it wasn't safe. Although the Hichu Luo Shu could protect Murongyu, it could easily expose the existence of the Hichu Luo Shu. One had to know that one of the three giants of the immortal world, the Immortal Palace, was currently looking for the Hichu Luo Shu. Therefore, unless it was a last resort, Murongyu didn't want to expose the Hichu Luo Shu in front of others. Therefore, after he escaped far away from the Luotian sect, he entered the Hichu Luo Shu world. Under the effect of the terrifying life force of the Tree of Life, Murongyu's injuries quickly recovered, and he returned to his peak state in a short time. Whoosh! Murongyu reappeared in the immortal world. The immortal world was really too big, and he was unfamiliar with this place. He had to familiarize himself with this place as soon as possible. Most importantly, he had to find out the identity of the woman and Kong Shani. As soon as he came to the immortal world, he was almost killed, and he almost couldn't escape. This made Murongyu feel very aggrieved. With his temperament, he naturally wouldn't let the beautiful woman and Kong Shani go. For the person who wanted to kill him, no matter how beautiful she was, Murong Yu would definitely not show mercy. Jiangzhou was huge, and there were towering mountains and steep ridges everywhere. However, there were many sects hidden in the towering mountains and steep ridges. Of course, there were also many towns and cities. Because he couldn't fly, Murong Yu could only move freely on the ground. This made him, who was used to flying, feel very uncomfortable. I heard that only when one reaches the golden immortal realm can one cultivate. I have to speed up my cultivation and reach the golden immortal realm as soon as possible. Along the way, although Murong Yu didn't enter any towns and cities, Hichu and the Hichu Luoshu was very familiar with the cultivation levels of the immortal world. There were no mortals in the immortal world. However, there were still many cultivators below the celestial immortal realm. After all, even though this was the immortal world, the descendants of the newly born immortals weren't heaven-defying enough to reach the immortal realm when they were born. They also needed to cultivate. However, because this was the immortal world, the immortal spirit energy was very rich. Therefore, these people could quickly enter the celestial immortal realm. There were even some who reached the celestial immortal realm in a few decades. However, after reaching the celestial immortal realm, their cultivation speed wouldn't be so terrifying. In the immortal realm, every time they broke through a major realm, their strength would undergo an earth-shattering change. However, not everyone was able to break through. Even if it was the lowest celestial immortal realm, there were a large number of people in this realm who died every year because they exhausted their lifespan. Above the celestial immortal realm, there was the exalted immortal realm. Although Murong Yu was only at the early stage of the celestial immortal realm, he had the strength of an exalted immortal realm. However, whether it was the celestial immortal realm or the exalted immortal realm, they were only the lowest existences in the immortal world. Celestial immortals were ants in the immortal world. They were the most common and the most worthless existences. They had no status at all in the immortal world. Exalted immortals were also ants in the immortal world, but they were ants with a certain status. Above exalted immortals were golden immortals and mystic immortals. Above the profound celestial was the overarching heavenly supreme celestial, and above that was the great overarching golden celestial. Only zenith heaven golden immortals were considered experts in the immortal world. As long as one reached this realm, one could establish a sect in the cultivation world. Of course, it did not mean that one had to become a golden immortal to establish a sect. However, a sect established by a golden immortal was just a mediocre force. Sects established before this realm were even more unrated forces among the unrated forces. In the immortal world, which was countless times crueler than the cultivation world, it was impossible for such a sect to exist. This was because without an expert to hold down the fort, it would be quickly destroyed by other sections. As long as one reached the golden immortal realm, he would be an expert in the immortal world and would have a very high status in the immortal world. Basically, he would be the sect master of a mediocre force. If Murong Yu wanted to fly and obtain a status in the immortal world, he would have to reach the golden immortal realm. However, he was only at the early celestial immortal realm. There was a gap of 5 realms between him and a golden immortal realm. With such a large gap, a considerable number of immortals would never be able to break through in their lifetime. However, Murong Yu was full of confidence. The immortal chi of the immortal world is indeed rich. If those transformational stage cultivators of the cultivation world were to cultivate here, I'm afraid it wouldn't take long for them to completely form an immortal body. Those immortal ascension pills and the like wouldn't be necessary. However, although the immortal chi of the immortal world is rich, there are no immortal meridians. Murong Yu flew for several days, but in the process, he did not see any immortal meridians. Even in the immortal world, immortal meridians were extremely rare and valuable. As for the disciples of the Black Sieve sect who had landed in the cultivation world, it was likely that the Black Sieve sect had rewarded them. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to have immortal meridians. However, Almost all of those immortal meridians had been taken by Murong-Yu, which benefited Murong-Yu. Jiang State Capital was the only super-state capital in Jiang State Capital. It was equivalent to a provincial city in the secular world. It was the most prosperous city in the entire Jiangzhou. Looking at Jiangzhou City from afar, Murong-Yu was shocked. It was a big city. This was a big city. The tall city walls, which almost reached the clouds, were like an endless mountain range. One could not see the end of it at a glance. The 5 major cities of the cultivation world paled in comparison to the Jiangzhou in front of him. In fact, the 5 major cities of the cultivation world added together were only the tip of the iceberg when compared to Jiangzhou City. One could imagine the vastness of Jiangzhou City. However, what Murong-Yu did not know was that Jiangzhou City was only a small city in a remote province in the immortal world. In the immortal world, there were as many cities as there were stars in the sky. Murong-Yu was shocked for a moment. Then, he walked straight towards Jiangzhou City. He had been walking through the mountains for the past few days, so his speed was not fast. Jiangzhou City was the first city in the immortal world that he had seen. No matter where one was, a city was always the best place to gather information. Stop! If you want to enter the city, you have to pay 100 immortal spirit pills. Murong-Yu was just about to enter the city when he was stopped by a few soldiers guarding the city gates. I have to pay immortal spirit pills to enter the city. Murong-Yu was stunned. Then, he looked embarrassed. How could he have immortal spirit pills? In the immortal world, immortal spirit pills were not only used to recover one's strength. They were also used as currency in the immortal world, just like the vitality recovery pill in the cultivation world. Murong-Yu did not need immortal spirit pills to recover his strength. Murong-Yu did not have any immortal spirit pills with him. Moreover, he did not have immortal spirit veins. It was impossible for him to refine immortal spirit pills. This was truly a case of a hero being stumped by a single penny. Seeing Murong-Yu standing there awkwardly, the few guards looked at Murong-Yu with disdain. An immortal who could not even afford 100 immortal spirit pills? This kind of person was either someone who had ascended from the lower realm or an itinerant cultivator without any power. It should be known that 100 immortal spirit pills was not a lot. An ordinary heaven immortal could afford it. No immortal spirit pills? Go back to where you came from. A guard began to chase Murong-Yu away. Chapter 381. Murong-Yu, who did not have any immortal spiritual pills, felt a little awkward. However, when he saw that these guards were looking at him with disdain, he was a little annoyed. When the guards began to chase him away, Murong-Yu couldn't help revealing a trace of unconcealable killing intent. Who was he? How could he be chased away by a mere guard? Hey kid, how dare you reveal your murderous intent to us? Are you courting death? The guards felt Murong-Yu's murderous intent and their murderous intent soared. Although they were only guards of Rivertown, their strength wasn't weak. Most importantly, they were backed by Rivertown. If Murong-Yu was from some sect, they would not dare to bully him. However, they usually liked to bully people like Murong-Yu, who had just ascended or were rogue cultivators without any backing from any sections. They bullied the weak and feared the strong. Kid, let's have a fight. One of the guards grinned and walked toward Murong-Yu. Murderous intent flashed in his eyes. These people must be very experienced in bullying people who are not as strong as them. A murderous intent flashed across Murong-Yu's eyes. These guards really deserved to die. However, the situation was unclear. He had just ascended and offended Luo Tian's sect. If he killed these guards, he would offend the forces of Rivertown. It was not worth it to make enemies out of these villains. It would not be too late to settle the score with them after the situation was clear. At the thought of this, Murong-Yu turned and was about to leave. Kid, wait. A furious roar rang in Murong-Yu's ears. At the same time, a guard had already appeared in front of Murong-Yu and stopped him. Murong-Yu's face abruptly sank as he couldn't suppress his murderous intent. Kid, did you come from Luo Tian's sect? Very well, follow me into the city. The guard sized up Murong-Yu for a long time before saying so. Luo Tian's sect? It should be the sect where he saw the stunning woman. Murong thought for a moment, then looked at the guard indifferently and asked, "So what if I am? So what if I'm not?" Haha, you're really audacious. Don't you know that the Luotian sect has issued a warrant for you in the entire Jiang prefecture? He actually dared to appear here. However, if I could take you down, it would be a great achievement. The Luotian sect will reward me handsomely. Another guard laughed as he walked up. At the same time, the other guards and even the cultivators near the city gate began to faintly surround Murong. All of them cast hostile looks at Murong. Murong cried out in his heart. He did not expect that the speed of the Luotian gate would be so fast. At the same time, Murong felt rather helpless. He was wanted in the cultivation world, and now he was wanted again when he just arrived in the immortal world. Did he really have the face of a wanted criminal? Kid, since you're here, don't leave. Go and get your reward. A guard grinned and reached out his hand to grab Murong. The other guards did not make a move. They just looked coldly at Murong, because they all saw that Murong was only at the early stage of the Heaven Immortal Realm. The guard who attacked was at the mid-stage of the Heaven Immortal Realm. The mid-stage of the Heaven Immortal Realm was enough to take down an immortal at the early stage of the Heaven Immortal Realm. There was no need for them to interfere. You're really courting death. Murong was furious. How dare mere cultivators at the Heaven Immortal Realm attack him? He had already killed a few cultivators at this level when he was still in the transformation stage. Murong did not want to cause trouble, but these people were too detestable. If he did not kill them, he would not be able to calm the anger in his heart. It just so happened that he was chased by that beautiful woman and Kong Shani, a golden immortal, as soon as he came up. He was full of anger, and these people bumped into his gun. At this moment, Murong decisively made a move. Bang! Murong took a step forward and punched out. After a loud, muffled sound, the guard who attacked was actually blasted into a bloody mist by Murong's punch. One punch. With just one punch, Murong killed this immortal at the mid-stage of the Heaven Immortal Realm. The surrounding people looked at Murong in a daze. For a moment, they did not react. All of you go to hell. Murong coldly snorted and executed the soldier formula. His figure flickered as he punched the guards one by one, killing them all. What a terrifying strength. The surrounding people saw Murong killing all the guards with one punch, and one of them had reached the late stage of the Heaven Immortal Realm. An immortal at the late stage of the Heaven Immortal Realm was killed by an immortal at the early stage of the Heaven Immortal Realm with one punch. Such a shocking scene immediately stunned the surrounding people. The killing intent in Murong's eyes soared. He slowly glanced at the surrounding people, revealing his naked killing intent. The surrounding immortals were shocked. They finally woke up from the shock of Murong killing the late-stage Heaven Immortal Realm guard with one punch. Then, one by one, they fled into Jiang State City. Humph! Murong coldly snorted in disdain. With a flash of his body, he flew off into the distance. Where do you think you're going? Just as Murong's figure moved, a thunderous voice resounded from within Jiangzhou City. Then, a figure rushed out of Jiang State Capital like a bolt of lightning. At the same time, a big hand reached out and grabbed Murong in the air. Mighty Immortal Realm? Murong sneered. His body suddenly stopped, and then he threw out a punch. Two huge fists fiercely collided in the void. Suddenly, an incomparably terrifying impact burst out, causing the ground to crack open, revealing cracks that spread into the distance. The two ascendant immortals clashed, but all they did was shatter the ground. They didn't even manage to distort the void in the slightest. It was not that Murong's strength had weakened, but the rules of the immortal world were much stronger than those of the cultivation world. It was just like how Murong could not fly in the immortal world. The void in the immortal world was very strong. Even if immortals like them attacked with all their strength, they could not distort the void, let alone cause it to collapse. The same power in the cultivation world was enough to shatter all the void within 100 million miles. Murong felt as if he had suffered a heavy blow. His entire body could not help but tremble, and he could not help but take a step back. The mighty immortal realm immortal in Jiang State City was directly sent flying by the terrifying recoil. He crashed into the city wall of Jiang State City, causing the incomparably tall city wall to shake. Puffed. The mighty immortal realm immortal spat out a mouthful of blood and looked at Murongyu in shock. Murongyu was clearly only at the early stage of the celestial immortal realm, but how could he injure him, who was at the mighty immortal realm, with one punch? However, it was also a fact that he was sent flying by a punch and spat out blood. "You're no match for me." Murongyu glanced at him, then flashed and shot into the distance. At this moment, Jiang State City was already alarmed, although he was not afraid of immortals at the mighty immortal realm. However, there were definitely more than immortals at the mighty immortal realm in Jiang State City. Moreover, the Luotian sect probably had experts in Jiang State City as well. "Captain, what's going on?" A group of guards of Jiang State City rushed out of the city and could not help but exclaim when they saw the mighty immortal with blood at the corner of his mouth. It turned out that this person was a captain of the guards of Jiang State City. The captain shook his head. "I met the person wanted by the Luotian sect. I exchanged a blow with him, but I was injured." "Captain, you were injured by a punch? What's the strength of that person?" someone exclaimed. "Early stage of the celestial immortal realm." The captain shook his head and smiled bitterly, puzzled. "Early stage of the celestial immortal realm? How is that possible? How could an early stage of the celestial immortal realm injure you with a punch?" "Captain, could it be that you saw wrongly? To be able to injure you with a punch, he's at least in the golden immortal realm," a guard said with a frown. "No matter what realm he is in, he's very powerful. Moreover, since he's wanted by the Luotian sect, and even the Luotian sect can't stop him, you should know what kind of strength he has. If you meet him in the future, it's best not to have any ideas." The captain shook his head and walked straight into Jiang State City. As for the few guards who died, so be it if they died. Many people died in the celestial world every day. Murongyu stopped after he was some distance away from Jiang State City. "It seems that I can't stay in Jiang State anymore. I have to leave this place as soon as possible. However, who knows how big Jiang State is? I can't fly. When can I leave this damn place?" Murongyu thought unhappily. "I have to find a way to join a sect. It has to be a big sect. Otherwise, it's useless." Murongyu pondered for a moment and thought so. Originally, if he became a punisher of the Huaxia cultivation world, he would join the Heavenly Punisher Palace. However, he didn't even know where the Heavenly Punisher Palace was now. Moreover, even if he knew, the Heavenly Punisher Palace wouldn't want him. Should he go back to the Huaxia cultivation world? Murongyu shook his head and instantly dispelled this idea. He had just come to the celestial world and hadn't made any achievements. Moreover, he was being hunted. If he went back to the Huaxia cultivation world with his tail between his legs, it would be really embarrassing. "I'd better find a place to improve my strength first. Hichu Luoshu is a good place. I wonder how much faster the flow of time in Hichu Luoshu can be now. However, before that, I have to find an immortal meridian." Murongyu naturally didn't need an immortal meridian for cultivation. He needed an immortal meridian to deal with what happened today. He had nothing now and couldn't even enter the city. However, how could it be so easy to find an immortal meridian? Apart from some extremely remote places and some forbidden areas, there were basically no immortal meridian in the celestial world. After countless years, they had long been collected by the immortals. Chapter 382. Jiangzhou was extremely vast. Just one large province was equivalent to the Huaxia cultivation world. In addition to the only provincial capital, Jiangzhou City, there were many other county cities and towns. Jianghai City was one of the county cities in Jiangzhou. Although it was only one of the many county cities in Jiangzhou, it was still much larger than one of the 5 major cities in the cultivation world. In the city, there were many powerful sects and countless immortals. It was extremely prosperous. Fortunately, there was a considerable distance between here and the Luotian sect. The Luotian sect's bounty had not reached here yet. Or rather, The Luotian sect's influence could not reach here. After all, the Luotian sect was only an unranked sect. Although their influence was strong, it was limited. Generally speaking, unranked sects like them could only occupy one county city at most. However, if it was a large sect like the mysterious sect, it would be able to dominate the remote Jiang prefecture. If the profound sect wanted Murong-Yu, then Murong-Yu would not be able to establish himself in Jiangzhou. After all, Jiangzhou was the profound sect's world. However, perhaps the profound sect big shot did not want to disturb the profound sect, or perhaps he did not want to expose the matter of him in the hot springs. Thus, the profound sect's power did not participate in the pursuit of Murong-Yu. Because of this, if it was only the Luotian sect, Murong-Yu had nothing to fear. Even the Luotian sect had golden immortals of the Great Principle. The Luotian sect is an unranked sect in the immortal realm. However, there are still a few golden immortals of the Great Principle. It is a subsidiary sect of the profound sect. Murong-Yu is currently in Jianghai City. He had already made some inquiries about the Luotian sect. Like the Black Sieve sect, the Luotian sect was also an unranked sect. This kind of sect could only rely on third-rate or second-rate powers, struggling at death's door. First-rate powers did not take them seriously at all. However, how did the Black Sieve sect get involved with the Immortal Palace? In front of a giant like the Immortal Palace, a sect like the Black Sieve sect was not even an ant. Something is strange. After learning about the various powers in the immortal realm, Murong-Yu felt that there was something fishy about the Black Sieve sect and the Immortal Palace. These behemoths gave Murong-Yu a headache. With his current strength, not to mention the Immortal Palace, he was not even a match for a small force like the Luotian sect. Although these forces were called unrated forces, all of them were colossi. How could someone like Murong-Yu, who had just ascended, provoke them? From the looks of it, if I want to join a sect, I'll have to go to another province. Although the Jiangzhou is big, there's only one third-rate sect, the mysterious sect. Furthermore, this mysterious sect is in cahoots with the Luotian sect. Murong-Yu pondered in his heart. If he were to join the mysterious sect now, he would undoubtedly be sent to be killed. Moreover, Murong-Yu had no interest in this kind of third-rate sect. He had already offended the Immortal Palace and the Devil sect. Only the Saint Gate, which was also one of the three major powers of the immortal world, could go against them. Should he join the Saint Gate? However, the Holy Gate wasn't located near Jiangzhou. It was quite a distance away from here. Moreover, Murong-Yu didn't know when the Saint Gate would start recruiting disciples. This time, we didn't get the fairy expansion pill. The sect leader will definitely be furious. This is the best time for us to perform. If we can snatch the immortal expansion pill, the sect master will value us highly. Who knows, he might even accept us as his disciples. A deep voice suddenly entered Murong-Yu's ears. Murong-Yu was stunned. Then he was overjoyed. The fairy expansion pill was a good thing. Like the realm breakthrough pill, the fairy expansion pill also had the effect of helping one to break through to the next realm. However, it was of a much higher level than the realm breakthrough pill. This was because the fairy expansion pill was mainly targeted at immortals. According to legend, if one had enough fairy expansion pills, it could help an immortal break through to the nine heavens' mysterious immortal realm. Of course, the fairy expansion pill wasn't omnipotent. Like the realm breakthrough pill, it was only effective at a certain realm. Once one surpassed the nine heavens' mysterious immortal realm, the fairy expansion pill would be useless. However, even so, the fairy expansion pill was still the most magical and rare item in the immortal world. It was magical because it could help immortals break through to the next realm. It was rare because there were very few fairy expansion pills in the immortal world. Generally speaking, this kind of pill was monopolized by various big forces. Moreover, only those big forces had the ability to refine the fairy expansion pill. Moreover, even among the big forces, this kind of pill that could help one break through to the next realm was rare. Otherwise, the immortal world wouldn't only have three big forces like the Immortal Palace. Instead, there would be 30, 300, or even more. The fairy expansion pill could help a person break through to the nine heavens' mysterious immortal realm. However, the nine heavens' mysterious immortal realm was above the golden immortal realm. Therefore, these fairy expansion pills were also very tempting to the golden immortals. This time, there are 100 fairy expansion pills. If the sect leader gets these fairy expansion pills, he might be able to break through to the nine heavens' mysterious immortal realm. When that time comes, our sect will become a third-rate force in the immortal world and be on par with the mysterious sect. The few immortals quickly ran out of Jianghai City. However, their conversation was clearly heard by Murong Yu. 100 fairy expansion pills. No wonder these golden immortals are coming. It's very tempting indeed. Murong Yu unfolded his body and quietly followed the few immortals. He also had thoughts about these fairy expansion pills. After all, he might not need them himself, but Shenzhen and the extreme divine realm demons needed them. If he wanted to gain a foothold in the immortal world, he had to quickly become a substitute for his own force, just like he did in the cultivation world. The fairy expansion pill was something that he needed. Of course, the fairy expansion pill could only help an immortal advance to the nine heavens' mysterious immortal realm. There were more powerful realms above that. Murong Yu's goal was not just the nine heavens' mysterious immortal realm, but a more powerful realm, an immortal emperor, or an even more powerful existence. He wanted the chaos Shenzhen to become the fourth big force in the immortal world. He wanted to surpass the three big forces. All of this required Murong Yu to work hard and fight for it. He had to get the fairy expansion pills today. He followed the few immortals out of Jianghai City. Along the way, Murong Yu saw many other immortals. Looking at the route that these people took, it seemed that they had the same goal as Murong Yu. The celestial immortal realm is the weakest realm. There are also exalted immortal realm experts, and even golden immortals or people of higher realms. It seems that the 100 fairy expansion pills have really caused a commotion in this area. I just don't know if there are any golden immortals. Murong Yu frowned slightly. If there were any golden immortals, Murong Yu basically had no hope. He was not so arrogant as to think that he really had the power to fight against a golden immortal just because he escaped from the hands of that beautiful woman and Kong Shani. He had only used the yin-yang fire to catch them off guard. It was purely a fluke. Not to mention the golden immortals. Murong Yu did not even have the confidence to fight against golden immortals above the exalted immortal realm. However, although he did not have the confidence, he would not give up. Even if he could only get one fairy expansion pill, it would be worth it. The Jianghai mountain range was the largest mountain range in the Jianghai county of Jiangzhou. It was endless and continuous. Senior brother, more and more people are catching up. What should we do? A few immortals rushed through the mountain range, as if they wanted to shake off the immortals who were chasing them. However, they could not shake them off at all. On the contrary, more and more people were chasing after them. Let's split up. No matter what, we must protect these fairy expansion pills. As long as our sect master breaks through to the nine heavens Xian immortal realm, we will settle the score with these sects one by one, an immortal said angrily. This time, 100 fairy expansion pills suddenly appeared in Jianghai City. Moreover, they appeared suddenly just as the auction was about to end. Therefore, the major sects did not receive the relevant information. Therefore, the experts of those sects did not come. In the end, only a few disciples of the Linghong sect managed to get the pills by luck. However, they also knew that those immortal expansion pills were like a hot potato, and that they would get into trouble because of their wealth. Therefore, they did not wait for the auction to end before leaving Jianghai City with the fairy expansion pills. However, as soon as they left, many cultivators had already caught up with them. Youngsters of the Linghong sect, leave the fairy expansion pills behind, and I can spare your lives. Finally, not long after entering the Jianghai mountain range, someone had already caught up and stopped the disciples of the Linghong sect. Kill! The disciples of the Linghong sect did not say a word. They only shouted and charged forward. Those who block me shall die. The senior brother of the Linghong sect roared angrily and charged forward. He threw out a punch that had the power to shatter the heavens and the earth as he charged towards the people who were blocking them. These people were obviously caught off guard by the sudden attack of the Linghong sect disciples. Bang! Bang! Two immortals were directly killed by the disciples of the Linghong sect, especially the senior brother of the Linghong sect. He was even more powerful and had already reached the golden immortal realm. Boom! He exchanged a blow with the golden immortal realm immortal who was blocking them. A terrifying force exploded and sent the two of them flying. However, very quickly, the senior brother of the Linghong sect charged forward again and instantly launched over 10,000 attacks. Bang! Obviously, the immortals who were blocking them were not a match for the Linghong sect disciples and were instantly killed. However, at this time, there were already many immortals surrounding the Linghong sect disciples. These people were originally following them from a distance. After someone attacked, they finally could not help but attack. Everyone, are you really going to go against the Linghong sect? The senior brother of the Linghong sect looked around and said coldly, "As long as you leave the fairy expansion pills behind, we will not make things difficult for you. On the contrary, we will let you leave this place safely." A golden immortal stepped forward and looked at the Linghong sect disciples and said calmly, "Most of them are immortals. Some of them are golden immortals. There's a lot of them. It's best if there's a big fight. Otherwise, how can I fish in troubled waters?" At this time, Murong Yu was hiding on a mountain peak in the distance. He was looking over here. As long as there was a chance, he would immediately attack and snatch it. Chapter 383. Ling Hongzong's disciples looked at the many immortals who had stopped them with a gloomy expression. These people were after the immortal expansion pills. Obviously, these people would not let them go even if they handed over the immortal expansion pills. "Junior brothers, we are far weaker than them. It seems like we won't be able to keep the immortal expansion pills today." Ling Hongzong's senior brother sent a voice transmission to his junior brothers. His junior brothers were furious. "Senior brother, are we just going to let it go? Are we just going to give them the immortal expansion pills?" They were not willing to give up. If they brought the immortal expansion pills back to the sect, their sect leader might take the opportunity to reach the nine heavens Xian immortal realm. By then, Ling Hongzong would become the second overlord of Jiang Prefecture, on par with the Xian sect. However, it was impossible for them to bring the immortal expansion pills back. How could they be willing to give up? They could only watch as their sect leader had the opportunity to reach the nine heavens Xian immortal realm. But this opportunity was killed by these people. We are no match for them at all. Even if we fight with our lives on the line, we won't be able to leave with the immortal expansion pills. Instead of this, we might as well give up the immortal expansion pills and save our lives. Moreover, I won't let them go. Ling Hongzong's senior brother's eyes flashed with murderous intent. 100 immortal expansion pills are here. Take them yourself if you want. Ling Hongzong's senior brother suddenly shouted and threw the jade bottle in his hand into the sky. "Senior brother, no." Ling Hongzong's junior brothers cried out in alarm. "Let's go." Ling Hongzong's senior brother shouted and leaped into the distance, trying to escape from the encirclement. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Just as Ling Hongzong's senior brother threw the immortal expansion pills into the sky, the immortals nearby all leaped into the sky and reached out their hands to grab the jade bottle in the air. Although they could not fly, leaping was not a problem for them. At the same time, as many people leaped into the sky, many large hands appeared out of thin air with terrifying power. They either grabbed the jade bottle in the sky, attacked the immortals who leaped into the sky, or slapped the large hands that were grabbing the jade bottle at the same time. The chaotic battle had already erupted the moment senior brother Ling Hongzong threw out the immortal expansion pill. Bang, bang, bang. There were heavenly immortals, ascendant immortals, and even golden immortals present. These immortals, no matter how strong or weak they were, immediately attacked. However, the gap between their realms had instantly turned into a one-sided massacre. As soon as the powerful gold immortals attacked, a large area around them was cleared. Countless heavenly immortals and even ascendant immortals were killed by the golden immortals. A single slap was enough to kill a large number of them. This was the strength of a gold immortal, a strength far greater than that of an ascendant immortal. In the distance, Moroniu narrowed his eyes as he looked over, his eyes flashing. However, his eyes revealed a trace of coldness and excitement. What made him excited was that these people had finally started fighting. With his strength, there was no way he could snatch the immortal expansion pill under the noses of so many gold immortals. Morong, you would only have a chance if these people were to engage in a melee. However, when he saw this, Morong, you could not help but be wary of the disciples of Linghong's sect. These guys had deliberately thrown out the immortal expansion pill to cause these people to fight over it. Meanwhile, they took the opportunity to leave the crowd, hiding in a corner but not leaving. These people's intentions were clear. Their goal was to let these people kill each other, and then they would go out and reap the benefits. Their intentions could be said to be extremely vicious. Fight, fight. The more intense the fight, the better. It's best if everyone dies. Morongyu did not get close to participating. He continued to watch the melee from afar. At this moment, the crowd that had originally numbered in the tens of thousands had been reduced by a large portion. Apart from the powerful gold immortals, all the heavenly immortals had been killed. Even most of the ascendant immortals had been killed. Only a few powerful ascendant immortals had managed to survive. At this moment, hundreds of gold immortals were engaged in a fierce melee. The immortal expansion pill was in the hands of one person for a while, and then it would appear in the hands of another person. Only after someone had obtained the immortal expansion pill would they be killed by the joint forces of others, and the immortal expansion pill would be obtained by someone else. Because of this, gold immortals were dying in large numbers. It did not take long for many gold immortals to die. If this continued, perhaps someone would be able to obtain the immortal expansion pill, but most of the gold immortals present would probably die. Even if they did not die, they would be seriously injured. Perhaps they had also realized this problem. Although they were still engaged in a melee, their strength was not as violent as before, and their moves were not as powerful. As for the immortal expansion pill, it lay quietly on the ground. No one dared to touch it. Whoever dared to touch it would die. The gold immortals who had died earlier were their examples. Everyone, if this continues, I'm afraid we'll all die. Perhaps no one will be able to obtain the immortal expansion pill. Why don't we stop here? A gold immortal suddenly said. It's not difficult to stop, but who will get the immortal expansion pill? Another gold immortal said in a deep voice. Everyone was stunned. No one continued to speak. Although they wanted to stop, they did not want to give up on the immortal expansion pill. However, everyone wanted to obtain the immortal expansion pill. They could not give it up. Therefore, the ownership of the immortal expansion pill was also a big problem. How about this? How about we divide it equally? There are 100 immortal expansion pills in a bottle. There are 50 of us here. 2 pills for each of us. Another gold immortal suggested. 2 pills for each of us. What's the use? A gold immortal sneered. The immortal expansion pill was similar to the realm breakthrough pill. However, it did not mean that one pill could break through a realm. Of course, if one was lucky, one pill would be enough to break through a realm. However, if one was unlucky, they might not be able to break through even with 100 or even thousands of pills. Therefore, they all wanted to obtain all 100 mortal expansion pills. That way, their chances of breaking through a realm would be increased to the maximum. 2 pills may not be a lot, but it's better than nothing. If this melee continues, I'm afraid none of us will benefit. On the contrary, someone else will benefit from it. A gold immortal said in a deep voice. Everyone fell silent. Naturally, they knew that the gold immortal from Ling Hong's sect had not left and was hiding nearby. If they continued to fight, they would be injured even if they did not die. However, the gold immortal from Ling Hong's sect was not injured at all. He was even recuperating. Once both sides were injured, the gold immortal from Ling Hong's sect might even be able to wipe them all out once he attacked. This was the evil plan of the gold immortal from Ling Hong's sect. Murong Yu, who was far away, naturally heard the conversation of the gold immortals and could not help but feel anxious. If these people really divided the immortal expansion pills equally, Murong you would not have the chance to get them at all. Snatch them from the gold immortal? If Murong you had reached the exalted immortal realm, he would have killed his way out. However, he was only at the early stage of the heaven immortal realm. He only had the strength of an exalted immortal. Snatching the immortal expansion pills from the gold immortal was definitely courting death. No, I can't let them split it equally. No matter what, I must get the immortal expansion pills today. Murong you made up his mind. At the same time, he sped up and rushed towards the direction of the immortal expansion pills. Of course, Murong you had already used the breath-concealing technique. With his strength, even the gold immortals would not be able to detect him for a while when he was running in the forest. The immortal expansion pills were placed on the ground, a certain distance away from the gold immortals. Murong you stopped when he was a certain distance away. Looking at the bottle of immortal expansion pills, his eyes flashed, and he began to think. With my speed, I can definitely get the immortal expansion pills if I rush indirectly. However, those gold immortals will definitely react in an instant. When that time comes, dozens of violent attacks will probably tear the void apart. My physical body is only at the level of a 4th-grade immortal artifact. I'm afraid I won't be able to block even one attack. However, if I enter Hichu Luoshu as soon as I get the immortal expansion pills, and then teleport away directly, I'll have some confidence. You should have some confidence. Murong you frowned slightly as he thought of various ways to escape. What he was worried about now was whether his speed was fast enough to leave this place through Hichu Luoshu as soon as he got the immortal expansion pills. There were dozens of gold immortals here. If they were to attack in anger, Murong you would be killed if he hesitated for a moment. While Murong you was hesitating, a gold immortal had already walked slowly towards the bottle of immortal expansion pills. Seeing this, Murong yu's heart tightened and he gritted his teeth. He had no other choice. At the same time, the disciples of Ling Hong's sect on the other side were also gritting their teeth as they looked over. Looks like my plan won't succeed. However, as long as they don't get the immortal expansion pills alone, and there are only 2 of them, I don't think they'll be so lucky as to break through their cultivation level, right? The disciples of Ling Hong's sect thought to themselves, "Senior brother, what should we do? Should we attack?" One of the disciples of Ling Hong's sect looked at the senior brother and asked. The senior brother of Ling Hong's sect shook his head. There were dozens of gold immortals present, and he was no match for them. If he were to attack now, he might be killed by the dozens of gold immortals together. Since they can't get all the immortal expansion pills alone, and so many of them have died, it's worth it for us. Let's leave now. As he spoke, the senior brother of Ling Hong's sect was about to leave. However, at this moment, he caught a glimpse of a figure darting out from the corner of his eye. As fast as lightning, the figure charged straight into the encirclement of dozens of gold immortals. This is the immortal expansion pills. The gold immortal who was recommended to get the immortal expansion pills had already arrived in front of the bottle of immortal expansion pills. He was extremely excited as he looked at the bottle of immortal expansion pills. At the same time, he reached out his hand and slowly grabbed the immortal expansion pills. Chapter 384. The Golden Immortal also thought of escaping as soon as he got his hands on the immortal expansion pills. However, the thought only appeared for a moment before it was ruthlessly killed by him. This was because he did not dare to do so. If he was a realm stronger, he might have taken the immortal expansion pills directly. However, with his current strength, he did not dare to do so. The other 40 golden immortals had all locked onto him. Once he showed any signs of abnormality, those golden immortals would definitely not show any mercy. They would join forces to kill him before he could escape. With his current strength, there was no way he could escape from their encirclement. Therefore, although he was excited, he did not dare to do so. He reached out his hand and slowly grabbed the jade bottle that contained the 100 immortal expansion pills. However, before his hand could touch the jade bottle, he felt a breeze suddenly appear and shoot toward him at lightning speed. The golden immortal was slightly shocked, and his hand could not help but stop for a moment. Swoosh! At this moment, a figure flashed past him, and the jade bottle that contained the immortal expansion pills had disappeared into thin air. It's over. The golden immortal instantly reacted. He knew that the immortal expansion pills had been snatched away by this person. He immediately reacted. A terrifying power erupted from his body. He reached out his hand and grabbed at the person who had suddenly appeared, intending to kill him. However, the moment the golden immortal made his move, the figure that had appeared out of thin air disappeared again. It disappeared without a trace, as if he had never appeared. If it were not for the immortal expansion pills that had disappeared, the golden immortal would have thought that it was just an illusion. Oh no! Seeing that Murong Yu had disappeared in an instant, the golden immortal suddenly roared. He unleashed his maximum strength and flew forward. Boom! However, the moment he moved, the power of the dozens of golden immortals around him had already attacked him. The power of 49 golden immortals attacked him at the same time. With such a terrifying power, the golden immortal could not withstand it all. He let out a blood-curdling scream before he was blasted into dust. F***. Who is that bastard? Who is it? The gold immortals kept roaring furiously, each and every one of them incomparably furious. Truth be told, they'd already reacted the moment Murong Yu charged into their encirclement. That was why they'd immediately taken action. However, their attacks were still a step too slow. By the time their attacks reached him, Murong Yu had already entered the Hichu Luoshu world and teleported away. As for the golden immortal who was killed, he was just unlucky. Those immortals didn't want to kill him. They just wanted to kill Murong Yu. As for him, he was purely a fish caught in the crossfire. It could be said that he had died an extremely unjust death. Who is it? Many gold immortals spread out their enormous divine senses and began to search the surroundings. However, they could not find any trace of Murong Yu. Could he be a Xian immortal? This thought suddenly surfaced in the minds of the gold immortals. Only Xian immortals could be faster than them. However, no matter how fast Xian immortals were, it was impossible for them to disappear into thin air. Could he be an expert who can teleport? In the immortal world, those who could teleport were high and mighty existences in the immortal world. Why would they care about these immortal expansion pills that were useless to them? Even if they really needed the immortal expansion pills, they could kill these puny gold immortals with just a slap. Why would they need so many? In the distance, the disciples of Ling Hongzong were shocked when they saw Murong Yu appear out of thin air, snatch the immortal expansion pills, and then leave safely. However, soon, the senior brother of Ling Hongzong laughed out loud. Well done, well done. This is called trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. Ha! The people of Ling Hongzong were indeed very happy. Although the immortal expansion pills were gone, they were still very happy. Who asked these bastards to snatch their immortal expansion pills? Not only did many people die, but they also didn't even see the shadow of the immortal expansion pills in the end. This was really a heavy loss. Many of the golden immortals had ugly expressions on their faces. They had worked so hard for so long, and many of their disciples had been killed or injured, but in the end, it was snatched away by someone else. How could they not be angry? However, no matter how angry they were, they couldn't do anything to Murong Yu. Who saw clearly who that person was? The gold immortals were furious. A young man in black. I think I saw him before. But that's impossible. He's only in the early stage of the heaven immortal realm. One of the gold immortals thought back. In a glimpse, just now, he vaguely saw Murong Yu's appearance. Early stage of the heaven immortal realm? T. Another gold immortal was furious. An early stage heaven immortal realm immortal snatched the immortal expansion pills from under the eyes of dozens of gold immortals and left safely. Who would believe this? Now that you mention it, I remember it too. That young man in black was in the heaven immortal realm. I also glanced at him on the way here and didn't find anything strange about him. Could he be a wolf in sheep's clothing? Another gold immortal frowned as he thought back. The memory of Murong Yu in his mind became clearer and clearer. Bullsh asterisk T. No one believed it. But as more and more gold immortals thought of Murong Yu's appearance, they finally began to believe it. Who the hell is that kid? He's only in the heaven immortal realm. How can he be so capable? The gold immortals were still furious. I don't know if you know about this. Not long ago, a young man in black at the early stage of the heaven immortal realm was wanted by the Luotian sect. It was said that the sect master of the Luotian sect, Kong Shani, personally took action, but he still managed to escape. Look at that kid. He seems to be the one wanted by the Luotian sect. A gold immortal suddenly thought of this and said. Everyone looked at the gold immortal blankly. They didn't know that Murong Yu was wanted. Therefore, the gold immortal told them about Murong Yu being wanted. If that kid is really that person, it's possible for him to snatch the immortal expansion pill from us. After all, even Kong Shani, who is in the golden immortal realm, couldn't stop him. One can imagine how terrifying his speed is. However, although his speed is terrifying, it's impossible for him to disappear into thin air. I guess that this person must have a spatial Dharma treasure, and it's a Dharma treasure that can carry living people. That should be the reason why he could escape from Kong Shani's pursuit. A gold immortal said suspiciously. If that's the case, the gold immortals looked at each other and then left. After all, this kind of spatial Dharma treasure that could carry living people was the most supreme existence. They had to quickly report this to the sect so that they could make a decision, although these gold immortals tacitly kept this matter a secret. But soon, the news that Murong Yu had a spatial Dharma treasure that could carry living people spread along with the news that he had snatched food from the mouths of many gold immortals. For a moment, the entire Jiang district began to shake. Countless forces and individuals began to search for Murong Yu on a large scale in an attempt to kill Murong Yu and obtain his Hichu Luo Shu. Luotian sect, main hall. The big shot from Xian sect was sitting on the main seat, while the sect master of Luotian sect, Kong Shani, was standing respectfully in the main hall. You're saying that the kid had a spatial Dharma treasure that could carry living people? Moreover, the flame that erupted from the Dharma treasure he used that day was most likely the yin-yang flame? The beautiful woman looked at Kong Shani with a frosty expression and said indifferently, that flame was obviously made up of two different flames. It should be the legendary yin-yang flame. That kid was only in the early stage of the heaven immortal realm that day. If it wasn't for the spatial Dharma treasure, he wouldn't have been able to escape no matter how fast he was, Kong Shani said respectfully. At this moment, he was filled with regret. If he had guessed earlier that Murong Yu had a spatial Dharma treasure, he wouldn't have stopped his search so carelessly that day. If he had been more careful, he might have been able to find Murong Yu's hiding place. However, he didn't know that once Murong Yu entered the Hichu Luo Shu world, no one would be able to know his whereabouts. After all, he could be transported to any place with a teleportation formation. Yin-yang flame, spatial Dharma treasure. The beautiful woman's heart pounded. If that was the case, then the temptation was too great for her. Have you investigated the other party's identity? Madam, there was indeed a heaven immortal in the Black Civ sect called Suda. However, he suddenly disappeared a few decades ago. It's said that he went to the lower realm. At that time, that person ascended from the lower realm. There's no doubt that it was Suda, Kong Shani said hurriedly. Descended? Ascended? Black Civ sect? Could it be that they descended because of the yin-yang flame and that spatial Dharma treasure? The beautiful woman thought to herself. The more she thought about it, the more likely it seemed. No matter what, you have to capture Suda. The beautiful woman instructed Kong Shani, then soared into the sky. She led the people of the Black Sect away from the Luotian Gate and flew back to the Black Sect. The temptation of the yin-yang flame and the spatial Dharma treasure was too great. Regardless of whether it was true or not, it was worth the Black Sect taking action. After the beautiful woman left, Kong Shani, who had originally been respectful, snorted coldly. There was no longer any respect on his face. In fact, there was even a trace of disdain. Yin flame? A spatial Dharma treasure that can carry a living person? If I get my hands on it, why should I fear a mere black sect? Kong Shani laughed coldly in his heart. His body swayed, and he left the great hall. Not long after, the colossal black sect of Jiangzhou made their move. At the same time, the news of Murong Yu's identity as Suda, a disciple of the Black Sieve sect, spread throughout Jiangzhou. Chapter 385. I've finally gotten my hands on the celestial expansion pill. However, it's still tough. In the Hichu Luoshu, Murong Yu is all smiles. However, as he spoke, he couldn't help but cough a few times and spit out a mouthful of blood. Previously, he'd relied on the unparalleled speed of the weapon symbol art to snatch the celestial expansion pill from the hands of those golden immortals. Murong Yu's speed and reaction were extremely fast, and he'd entered the Hichu Luoshu world immediately. However, he hadn't been able to avoid the attacks of those golden immortals who'd reacted. Although it was only the aftermath, Murong Yu's chi and blood were surging from the bombardment. Even his body, which was as strong as a Tier 4 immortal tool, had cracks appearing on it. After entering the Hichu Luoshu world, Murong Yu immediately teleported away. Fortunately, I have the Hichu Luoshu. Otherwise, not only would I not have been able to obtain the celestial expansion pill, but I might also have lost my life. After recovering from his surprise, Murong Yu couldn't help but smile bitterly. In the end, it was still because he was too weak. If he was a little stronger, he wouldn't have been in such a sorry state and almost killed. The Hichu Luoshu is really a divine item. Murong Yu couldn't help but sigh. Ever since he'd stepped into the cultivation world, how many times had the Hichu Luoshu saved his life? Murong Yu didn't know. In any case, every time he'd encountered danger, he'd relied on the Hichu Luoshu to avoid danger. 100 celestial expansion pills. Now, I'm only missing the immortal vein. Murong Yu handed the celestial expansion pills to Hichu and began to use the Yin cauldron to analyze the prescription of the celestial expansion pill. Once he found the immortal vein, he'd be able to refine a large number of celestial expansion pills. Woof! The large black dog ran to Murong Yu's side and barked madly at him. Ever since this guy had ascended to the celestial realm with Murong Yu, he'd been trapped in Hitu and Luoshu and hadn't left. This made him very unhappy. In reality, Murong Yu was not trying to imprison him, but he really did not have the time to summon the black dog out. He had been hunted down as soon as he had arrived in the celestial realm. And although the large black dog had also reached the heaven immortal tier, this guy was also a troublemaker. If he was allowed to come out, he would probably attract countless troubles. This time, I have to go out no matter what. I'm about to suffocate to death in here, the large black dog said gloomily after roaring at Murong Yu. Although Hichu Luoshu was huge, there was no one inside. It was already a miracle that a big black dog didn't suffocate to death. Murong Yu nodded. Now that he had the immortal expansion pill, all that was left was the immortal meridian. However, how could it be so easy to find an immortal vein? Another reason was to join a sect and increase one's strength. Increasing one's strength was not something that could be rushed. Even if Murong Yu didn't deliberately cultivate the chaotic celestial body records, it would automatically circulate and cultivate. Moreover, when he broke through to the second stage, this circulation speed became even faster. Moreover, the Tree of Life was constantly replenishing a large amount of incomparably pure, chaotic power. So Murong Yu's strength was almost constantly increasing. However, it was really difficult to break through the chaotic celestial body records, and once it broke through, Murong Yu's strength would skyrocket. Of course, it wasn't easy to break through either. At least, it wouldn't be possible in a short time. Thus, Murong Yu couldn't increase his strength even if he wanted to. Of course, if he could speed up time in Hichu Luoshu now. However, if he wanted to speed up time in Hichu Luoshu, he would have to burn recovery pills or spirit meridians. Only then would he have enough energy to accelerate time. However, Moronyu was currently poor. He didn't have any alchemical pills or spirit meridians, let alone immortal meridians. Thus, the most important thing now was to find some immortal meridians. This way, not only could he speed up time, but he could also refine alchemical pills, killing two birds with one stone. With a flash, Moronyu and the large black dog left Hichu Luoshu. Kid, why the long face? Isn't it just immortal meridians? Let's just rob a few sections. Seeing Muronyu's dejected expression, the large black dog couldn't help but give him a rotten idea. Moronyu rolled his eyes. He didn't need the large black dog's reminder. He'd already had this idea. However, with their current strength, how could they dare rob those sects? They'd probably be killed before they could even make a move. Moreover, how could ordinary sects have immortal meridians? In the immortal realm, immortal meridians were equivalent to spirit meridians in the cultivation world. Ordinary sects couldn't have them. The reason Suda and the others had so many immortal meridians was probably because the immortal palace had bestowed them with them. Otherwise, the Black Civ sect wouldn't have been so generous. I think we should look around the forbidden and dangerous areas. I wonder if Jiangzhou has such forbidden areas. Moronyu muttered to himself for a moment, then led the large black dog forward. At this moment, the entire Jiangzhou was in an uproar. Everyone was searching for Suda, the disciple of the Black Civ sect. Not only had Suda obtained 100 immortal expansion pills, but he'd also obtained a spatial treasure that could carry a living person. The immortal expansion pills were secondary. The spatial treasure that could carry a living person was enough to drive people crazy. As a matter of fact, all the sects in Jiangzhou had already sent out disciples to kill Moronyu, all for the sake of obtaining his treasures. Whether it was intentional or not, this news only spread in Jiangzhou. Of course, there was no such thing as an airtight wall. This news would eventually spread out of Jiangzhou. In a small city in Jiangzhou, Moronyu was currently in a restaurant in the middle of the city. Kid, don't tell me the Suda they're talking about is you. The large black dog drank a barrel of wine, then looked at Moronyu and chuckled. Moronyu found this rather amusing. He hadn't expected that the identity he'd casually revealed would lead these people to believe that he really was Suda, the disciple of the Black Civ sect. I wonder if the Luotian sect will go after the Black Civ sect to settle accounts. These two sects are about the same level of power, but the Luotian sect's background is far inferior to the Black Civ sect's. Moronyu snickered inwardly. The Luotian sect's background was only the profound sect, a third-rate power. The Black Civ sect, on the other hand, was a subordinate power of the Immortal Palace. The Immortal Palace was such a colossus that even a single disciple could destroy the profound sect. None of these sects are good people. Moronyu laughed coldly in his heart. He wanted nothing more than for them to be wiped off the face of the immortal realm. This time, the profound sect had actually made a move. Moronyu couldn't help but snicker at their methods. Moronyu's spatial magic treasure had been stolen from the profound sect. They'd already issued a warrant for Moronyu's arrest in all of Jiangzhou. Moronyu was filled with disdain for the profound sect's methods. Their methods were exactly the same as those of the cultivation world. They were all so shameless. Moronyu suspected that the woman he'd met that day was the profound sect's important figure. Don't you have a grudge against all these sects? Why don't we go cause them some trouble? Let them kill each other? The big black dog continued to come up with rotten ideas. Moronyu's heart leapt. This was a good idea. The Black Civ sect and the Luotian sect were about the same level of power, but the profound sect was stronger. He'd have to think of a way to make them kill each other. What a strong black dog. It's perfect for dog stew. Just as Moronyu was thinking of a way to destroy the Black Civ sect and the Luotian sect, a thunderous voice exploded from the top of the restaurant. F***CK. Which bastard is it? The big black dog, who'd been eating and drinking, immediately roared in anger. With a bang, the big black dog smashed the table in front of him with a paw. At the same time, he leaped out and charged toward the person who'd spoken. The person who'd spoken was a bald, middle-aged immortal who'd just entered the restaurant. At this moment, he was looking at the big black dog with shining eyes. You dare to eat your lord, heavenly dog? You're courting death. Today I'll eat you all, the big black dog roared angrily. He charged forward and viciously swiped his paw at the middle-aged man. You're actually a big black dog in the heavenly immortal realm. Only dog meat like this will taste good. Today I'll definitely kill you and make dog stew. The bald man laughed loudly. He took a step forward and viciously punched at the big black dog. F***CK. The big black dog was furious and cursed loudly. At this moment, Moronyu also stood up. He looked coldly at these people, but didn't make a move. In fact, Moronyu sneered in his heart. They should be thanking the heavens and earth that he and the big black dog hadn't caused trouble. Now, however, they were provoking them of their own accord. This was practically courting death. Boom! The big black dog and the bald man exchanged a blow. Immediately, they were both sent flying back. However, the terrifying shockwaves of power suddenly exploded, shattering all the tables, chairs, and dishes in the restaurant. However, the restaurant only swayed slightly. It wasn't destroyed. There had to be a formation or restriction added to the restaurant. After all, the background of this restaurant wasn't simple. What a powerful black dog. However, this kind of dog meat will definitely taste good. Brothers, you're in for a treat today. Wait for me to kill this bastard. The bald man laughed loudly and once again pounced toward the big black dog. Haha, it's rare to encounter such a powerful big black dog. We definitely can't let him go today. However, we can't leave the big black dog's master alive, either. We'll kill him as well. Another cultivator at the intermediate stage of the Heaven Immortal stage walked out and slowly walked toward Moronyu. He actually wanted to kill Moronyu as well. However, would they also stew Moronyu for dog meat? Moronyu sneered in his heart, and a wisp of cold, killing intent flashed past between his brows. Big black dog, this place is small, so there's a lot of space for you to use. Go outside and kill them. Moronyu sneered. His figure flashed, and he rushed out of the restaurant. The big black dog also sneered and transformed into a streak of black light and rushed out. Meanwhile, the bald man and the others also rushed out. Big black dog, there's no need to show mercy. Even if the sky collapses, I'll hold it up for you. Kill as much as you want today, Moronyu said with killing intent. How laughable. A mere cultivator at the early stage of the Heaven Immortal stage dares to talk nonsense again. Now, let me see how indomitable you are. The cultivator at the intermediate stage of the Heaven Immortal stage who wanted to attack Moronyu, you just now sneered and walked toward Moronyu step by step. Chapter 386. I didn't want to cause trouble, but since you're the one who wants it, I'll reluctantly send you on your way. Moronyu shook his head and said helplessly as he looked at the mid-stage sky, Immortal walking towards him with a sinister smile. The early-stage sky, Immortal flew into a rage when he heard that. He roared angrily and stomped his foot on the ground. A powerful force gushed out from the soles of his feet, instantly creating a shocking deep pit on the ground. On the other hand, the mid-stage sky, Immortal borrowed the force of the explosion to soar into the sky and pounce toward Moronyu like an eagle pouncing on its prey. During this process, he stretched out his big hand and turned it into a sharp claw, grabbing at Moronyu's head. Moronyu just stood there with his hand behind his back and looked at the Immortal's swift and violent attack indifferently. He didn't move at all and didn't even change his expression. Could it be that he's scared out of his wits? Look at his idiotic look. He's most likely scared out of his wits. Seeing Moronyu standing there without moving, the nearby immortals, especially the bald man's group, couldn't help but laugh at Moronyu. This kid should be an idiot who's just been born, right? He doesn't even have the most basic reaction. Damn it. The mid-stage sky, Immortal laughed sinisterly. He didn't show mercy because of Moronyu's lack of reaction. On the contrary, his attack became even fiercer. Bang! The mid-stage sky, Immortal's sharp claw, swiped at Moronyu's head fiercely and was about to crush it. However, at this moment, Moronyu moved. To be precise, it was Moronyu's right hand that moved. Whoosh! Moronyu's right hand, which was originally behind his back, turned into a blur. He clenched his hand into a fist and fiercely punched at the mid-stage Heavenly Immortal's sharp claws. Bang! Murong-Yu's fist arrived first and fiercely bombarded the mid-stage Sky Immortal's sharp claw. The moment the two sides collided, the mid-stage Sky Immortal felt as if he was hit hard. An extremely terrifying force came from the sharp claw. However, with a crack, the mid-stage Sky Immortal's sharp claw was directly shattered. The heart-wrenching pain stimulated the mid-stage Sky Immortal, causing him to involuntarily burst out a shrill scream. However, Murong-Yu's attack was definitely not limited to this. After shattering the mid-stage Sky Immortal's sharp claw, Murong-Yu's fist even more fiercely. Crack. The mid-stage Celestial Immortal's entire arm was blasted apart. Finally, before the Immortal could retreat, Murong-Yu ruthlessly landed a punch on his body. Bang! After a huge muffled sound, half of the Immortal's body was directly blasted apart, and blood sprayed into the sky. Die! Murong-Yu shouted coldly. He opened his fist and slapped the mid-stage Sky Immortal's head. Bang! Under the effect of the terrifying force, the mid-stage Sky Immortal was smashed into a cloud of blood mist by Murong-Yu's palm. An early-stage Sky Immortal actually killed a mid-stage Sky Immortal with a single slap. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people were all dumbfounded. Each and every one of them was shocked. Even the bald man who was fighting with the big black dog on the other side was shocked. For a moment, he was stunned and was almost killed by the big black dog's claw. Kill him. After a long time, the companions of the killed Sky Immortal finally reacted. After a furious roar, the three Sky Immortals burst out with terrifying power at the same time and charged toward Murong-Yu. You're all courting death. A cold light flashed past Murong-Yu's brows. He was very disdainful of these people who overestimated their strength. However, he didn't move. Instead, he reached into the void and pulled out the Phoenix Spear from his dantian. The Phoenix Spear was Zhao Yun's personal divine weapon. However, Zhao Yun's cultivation level had dropped in his final battle, and Murong-Yu had obtained it in the end. All this time, Murong-Yu had been using the Phoenix Spear to fight. However, most of the time, he kept it in his dantian and nurtured it. As Murong-Yu grew stronger, so did its power. Clearly, the Phoenix Spear was recovering faster and faster. Although the Phoenix Spear wasn't as strong as Murong-Yu's body, which was a 4th-grade immortal weapon, it was still a 3rd-grade immortal weapon. Die! A late-stage, Celestial Immortal furiously roared. His entire body turned into a black shadow as he charged in front of Murong-Yu. His fists burst forth with terrifying power as he ruthlessly smashed them towards Murong-Yu's head. Murong-Yu didn't even look. He just stabbed out with his spear. Bam! Murong-Yu's attack arrived first. Before the opponent's fist could hit his head, his spear stabbed into the opponent's head. A terrifying power exploded, and the opponent's head exploded into a cloud of blood. He killed a late-stage Sky Immortal with a single strike. Murong-Yu's strength was clearly much stronger than this person. He should have the strength of an Ascendant Immortal. However, how could an early-stage Sky Immortal have the strength of an Ascendant Immortal? Wasn't this nonsense? Although the surrounding people saw it with their own eyes, they still chose not to believe it. Chi! An immortal sword pierced through the air with a sharp sound. It carried terrifying power and shot from behind, wanting to cut Murong-Yu in half. Murong-Yu sneered. He didn't even look and stabbed his spear behind him. Clang! After the deafening sound of metal clashing, the crowd suddenly saw Murong-Yu's spear piercing the tip of the sword. At this moment, the two weapons paused in the void for a moment. Subsequently, in the next instant, the immortal sword seemed to have suffered a heavy blow, and it emitted a clear cracking sound before shattering into pieces. Murong-Yu's spear was like a hidden dragon, stabbing forward fiercely. It directly pierced into the opponent's chest. With a puff, the mid-stage Sky Immortal widened his eyes and looked at the spear that pierced his chest in disbelief. Then, with a loud roar, his entire body exploded. In a short while, Murong killed 3 immortals who were higher than him. Murong explosive combat power shocked the surrounding immortals. As for the 3rd immortal who attacked before, he turned around halfway and quickly fled into the distance with a look of horror on his face. Murong sneered. Using the army formula, he quickly caught up and stabbed his spear at the opponent's back, directly killing him. So far, Murong had killed 4 immortals who were higher in cultivation than him. One of them had even reached the late-stage sky immortal realm. Not far away, the bald man who was fighting with the large black dog saw how Murong was so fierce and killed all his immortals in such a short time. He instantly panicked, especially when he saw Murong holding a spear and slowly walking toward him with a cold expression. He was even more terrified. Pum! Just as he was absent-minded, the large black dog barked loudly and sent the bald man flying with a slap of its paw. F***CKU. You actually want to eat me? Today, I'll eat you, the large black dog cursed. The large black dog cursed as he charged over. Then he suddenly opened his ghastly mouth that was like a black hole and actually swallowed the bald man in a single gulp. The bald man wasn't weak to begin with. However, he was scared out of his wits by Murong and was knocked dizzy by the large black dog's claw. In the end, he was even swallowed by the large black dog. This guy had died the most sullen death. At first, he had wanted to eat the large black dog's flesh. Who would have thought that he would be eaten by the large black dog instead? He took the storage rings of these immortals. Although these immortals weren't much, they still had some celestial spirit pills. Although they weren't very useful, they were still somewhat useful. F***CK. You actually want to eat Lord Heavenly Dog. After swallowing the bald man, the large black dog was still very displeased, and he continued to curse. His eyes flashed with a fierce light as he swept his gaze over the immortals in the surroundings. It was as if he was choosing someone to eat. The immortals in the surroundings were given a fright and hurriedly retreated. After witnessing Murong use powerful strength, who would still think that he was only a minor immortal in the early stage of the Heaven Immortal tier? All of you stop right there. Just as Murong and the large black dog were about to leave this place, a voice that was filled with killing intent traveled over. At the same time, a group of immortals quickly rushed over from afar and very quickly blocked Murong's path. Was it you who killed the disciples of my bright sky sect? A middle-aged man looked at Murong with killing intent, not concealing his killing intent at all. I killed a few pieces of trash, but I don't know whether they were trash from your bright sky sect, Murong said indifferently as he glanced at the other party. However, he didn't realize that when these people revealed that they were disciples of the bright sky sect, the immortals in the surroundings immediately retreated far away. There was even some indescribable fear on their faces. It was as if they were very terrified of these people from the Bright Sky sect. What audacity, killing the people of my Bright Sky sect, and still being so arrogant. You're really courting death. Zhu Qing's nose was about to become crooked from anger, and he looked at Murong with killing intent. He took a few steps forward and was about to attack and kill him. Those who kill will be killed by others. I advise you not to attack, or else I don't mind sending you on your way. Murong looked at Zhu Qing indifferently. He was only a high immortal, and it wasn't like he hadn't killed one before. If that's the case, then you can go die. Zhu Qing sneered and stretched out his large hand, grabbing down at Murong in the air, wanting to kill Murong with a single strike. However, he didn't underestimate Murong. Since Murong was able to kill the bald man and the others, his strength was definitely not weak. Although he could easily kill all of them, he was a high immortal, and Murong was only in the early stage of the Heaven Immortal tier. Martial Uncle, we still have important matters to attend to. We must not delay. At this time, an immortal from the Bright Sky sect anxiously said to Zhu Qing, "Killing him will only take a moment. It won't delay our business." Zhu Qing sneered and directly attacked Murong. Chapter 387. How arrogant of you. Murong couldn't help but laugh in disdain when he saw Zhu Qing charging towards him with every step he took. It was true that Zhu Qing was an ascendant immortal. However, he might not be stronger than Murong. In Murong opinion, Zhu Qing was merely an early ascendant immortal. There was even a gap between him and the Black Civ sect's leader. That day, Murong had chased the leader from the cultivation world to the immortal world. How could he be afraid of this man? You don't know the difference between life and death. Today, I'll send you on your way. Murong sneered and stomped the ground. He borrowed the force of the stomp to soar into the air. In the air, the spear in his hand transformed into a black dragon. It roared and stabbed viciously at Zhu Qing. You overestimate yourself. Zhu Qing sneered. He didn't dodge, but punched out. Rumble. After an earth-shattering explosion, Zhu Qing was sent flying. In the sky, Murong was also sent flying by a huge force. The qi and blood in his body churned like raging waves. His arms were numb. With a single thought, Murong suppressed the churning qi and blood in his body. Streams of green life force flowed out from the tree of life and instantly flowed through Murong's limbs and bones. They immediately healed his injuries and made him as good as new. Zhu Qing's fist felt as if it had been crushed by a divine mountain. It was numb and even showed signs of breaking. What a terrifying force! Zhu Qing twisted his body fiercely and flipped himself up from his flying state. He stood on the ground once again. The force of Murong's attack was channeled through his feet. Bang! The ground beneath his feet suddenly shattered, and a huge crater appeared. One after another, ghastly cracks spread rapidly into the distance. It was a terrifying sight to behold. Zhu Qing's face was filled with shock. He really couldn't understand how a person in the early stage of the celestial immortal stage could fight against him, who was an exalted immortal. Furthermore, in the exchange just now, it seemed that he was at a disadvantage. As for the people watching from the side, although they were a little shocked, they were obviously immune to it. They were no longer surprised by Murong's strength. You're just a mere ascendant immortal. Killing you is as easy as blowing off dust. Murong sneered. Stepping on the ground, he once again soared into the air. His long spear once again turned into a ray of light and rushed towards Zhu Qing. You overestimate yourself. Although Zhu Qing was shocked by Murong's strength, it didn't mean that he thought that Murong was stronger than him. With a flash of his body, he pounced forward as well. Boom, boom, boom. In just a few moments, the two of them had already exchanged over 1,000 blows. Terrifying power continued to erupt and spread in all directions. Bang! Bang! The two of them collided in the void, and then both of them were sent flying. Murong took a few steps back, and the power overflowing from the soles of his feet constantly shattered the ground. Zhu Qing, on the other hand, was sent flying in a sorry state. In the end, he landed heavily on the ground, creating a huge human-shaped crater. Uncle Master, the Immortals of Scenic Sky sect exclaimed. This was because they saw that the corner of Zhu Qing's mouth was bleeding. Obviously, he had been injured in the battle with Murong. At this moment, Murong on the other side still looked calm and composed. He didn't look injured at all. It was obvious who was superior. Great Vajra Chakra Seal. Murong's eyes shone brightly. He suddenly withdrew his phoenix spear and waved his hands, striking out the soldier formula of the 9 syllables. Boom! A huge handprint that was like a divine mountain suddenly appeared out of thin air above the firmament. It then crushed the void, bringing with it an incomparably terrifying and destructive aura as it ruthlessly pressed down on Zhu Qing. Zhu Qing was shocked and shouted. He quickly waved his hands and struck out a dazzling divine light to meet the great Vajra Chakra seal that was pressing down on him. At the same time, Zhu Qing retreated rapidly and retreated into the distance. Outer Lion Seal. After striking out the great Vajra Chakra seal, Murong struck out another handprint. This handprint was more lethal than the great Vajra Chakra seal. Suddenly, a mountain-sized, lion-shaped handprint appeared out of thin air. It roared in the void and rushed toward Zhu Qing. At the same time, Murongyu executed the soldier formula, and his figure was as fast as lightning as he charged forward. Dark divine demon Prajna. With a roar in his heart, Murongyu struck out the seventh move of the dragon elephant Prajna technique, the most powerful move. Boom, boom, boom. Zhu Qing's expression changed. He roared again and again. Waves of terrifying power rushed out from him like a torrent. Attacking Murong used various handprints and powers. However, these were Murongyu's most powerful moves. How could they be so easily blocked? Puff, puff, puff. Even if Zhu Qing gave it his all, he was still unable to block Murongyu's attack. Although he blocked a portion of the power, he was still sent flying. Like a shooting star in the sky, Zhu Qing was blasted into the distance. During this process, a streak of blood slid through the void in an extremely beautiful trajectory. He's not dead yet. Even after receiving 3 of his most powerful attacks, Zhu Qing still hadn't been killed. This caused Murongyu to be a little surprised. However, he understood after thinking about it. Although Zhu Qing was not as strong as the leader of the Black Civ sect, he was not far behind. Murongyu was strong, but he could not kill Zhu Qing as easily as he could kill a heaven-restricted immortal. However, Zhu Qing was going to die today. Murongyu used the army formula and rushed forward. Elephant drawing fist 1,000 armies. Murongyu roared in his heart and punched Zhu Qing's body. Murongyu's terrifying power erupted. In the end, Zhu Qing couldn't hold on any longer. With a blood-curdling scream, his entire body exploded from Murongyu's attack. An immortal of the high and mighty realm had been killed, just like that. Master Uncle has been killed. Seeing this scene, the immortals of Bright Sky Gate couldn't help but cry out in alarm and scatter in all directions. If you want to die, then run. Murongyu didn't make a move to stop them from fleeing. However, when his cold voice rang out, the Bright Sky Society's people immediately stopped in their tracks. Murongyu was so powerful that even their martial uncle Zhu Qing had been killed. Wouldn't killing heavenly immortals like them be as easy as flipping his hand? When he saw that they had stopped fleeing, Murongyu nodded slightly and looked at the onlookers. When they met Murongyu's gaze, they couldn't help but shiver. Then, they quickly retreated far away. They did not dare to provoke Murongyu. Woof, woof, woof. Brat, what do you think? How about I eat them all? The large black dog walked over and drooled as he looked at the immortals who had gathered together again. After I interrogate them, you can do whatever you want. As for those who do not cooperate, you can eat them, Murongyu said calmly as he walked over. The disciples of the Bright Sky sect were instantly scared to the point of trembling. Eaten by a large black dog? Such a sullen death. They would rather be slapped to death by Murongyu. Speak. What business does your Bright Sky sect have this time? What level of experts are there in Bright Sky sect? Murongyu looked indifferently at the disciples of Bright Sky sect and asked, Our sect founder is a mystic immortal. Our current sect master strength has also reached the late stage of the golden immortal realm and is very strong. A disciple of Bright Sky sect hurriedly said, The sect founder of Bright Sky sect was only a mystic immortal? Not even an overarching heavenly supreme immortal? Murongyu nodded. This Bright Sky sect could not even be considered a second-rate sect. However, in the immortal realm, there were many such sections. For example, even if the Bright Sky sect was not strong, they were definitely an overlord of this generation. The strongest expert has only reached the mystic immortal realm. Although his strength is not strong, he can still crush me as easily as crushing an ant. Murongyu weighed the pros and cons in his heart, and finally dispelled a certain thought of his. If I can reach the exalted immortal realm, destroying this Bright Sky sect will be very easy. However, the stronger one is, the more difficult it is to break through. How can it be so easy to break through? Murongyu sighed in his heart. After cultivating the chaotic celestial record, Murongyu did not encounter any bottlenecks. However, the chaotic celestial record was really difficult to cultivate. What was the serious matter you were talking about earlier? Earlier, Moroniu had overheard their conversation, which was why he'd wanted to stop them. The disciples of Bright Sky sect looked at each other and then fell silent. A cold, killing intent flashed in Moroniu's eyes as he said, "Do you all want to die? Senior, it's like this." The immortal who had answered earlier was about to speak when he was interrupted by another person. "You're not allowed to speak. Even if we die, we can't speak. You're courting death." A cold light flashed in Moroniu's eyes as he shot the immortal to death. "Speak." Moroniu looked at everyone with murderous intent. "We've discovered a ruin." Seeing that Moroniu had killed an immortal without saying a word, the disciples of Bright Sky sect felt a chill in their hearts. The immortal who had been interrupted earlier hurriedly said, afraid that he would be killed by Moroniu. "Ruin?" Moroniu was startled at first. Then his face lit up with joy. "Ruin's a good thing. I like ruins the most. Where's this ruin?" "Near Song Mountain." It was still that immortal. Moroniu nodded. "Who else knows about the existence of the ruin?" A disciple of our Bright Sky sect accidentally discovered that we were among the group of people rushing to the ruin. As for whether other sects and forces know, that's unknown. Moroniu nodded and said, "In that case, you all can go." As he spoke, Moroniu left the small town and rushed in the direction of Song Mountain. Ruins represented treasures, especially unexplored ruins, which contained endless treasures. However, it was obvious that many people already knew about this ruin. Moroniu did not dare to delay. If he was a step late, he was afraid that there would be nothing left. Chapter 388. Song Mountain was a rather ordinary mountain range in the Jiang province of the Immortal World. Usually, not many immortals would appear in this place, and not many immortals would even pass by occasionally. However, in the past few days, countless immortals had flocked to this place. Legend had it that ruins had appeared in the depths of Song Mountain. When this news spread, it attracted countless people to flock over. The experts of the nearby sects had all rushed to Song Mountain as soon as possible. Ruins were the cave abodes of some ancient sects or almighty figures. These sects or almighty figures had either been destroyed or died, but their cave abodes seemed to have been preserved. After being discovered by later generations, they became ruins. These cave abodes left behind by ancient sects and almighty figures must contain extremely large amounts of treasures. Even if it was just the ruins left behind by those small sects in ancient times, it was still a fatal attraction to the current immortals. After all, the experts of ancient times were generally stronger than the experts of today. Moreover, the immortal weapons and cultivation methods of that time were extremely powerful. This was because with the annihilation of time, the cultivation methods of those ancient sects and experts, or their inheritances, these had gradually declined and even disappeared with the annihilation of time. Although the current immortal world had not declined because of this. However, if one were to obtain a cultivation method from the ancient times and combine it with the current cultivation method, one might be able to reap unexpected benefits. The most important thing was that the current sects did not have any inheritances at all. Without a powerful cultivation method to cultivate, they would never be able to improve their own cultivation, and they would never be able to make their sect stronger. Therefore, when these sects learned of the ruins' appearance, they all flocked over. Compared to those divine weapons and elixirs, they were more interested in ancient cultivation methods. When Moroniu arrived at Song Mountain, he saw that it was not packed with people. Although there were many immortals who had rushed over, Song Mountain was even bigger. Moreover, at this time, those who had rushed over had probably already entered the ruins. The ruins were in the deepest part of Song Mountain. Moroniu stepped on the army formula and raised his speed to the limit. He turned into a stream of light and rushed directly into the depths of Song Mountain. It must be mentioned that Moroniu had been constantly using the battle character art ever since he started cultivating it. As a result, his combat strength had always been maintained at a state that surpassed his peak. That was why he could easily kill Zhu Qing and ascend an immortal that day. When Murong Yu arrived at a valley shrouded in clouds, he rushed in without hesitation. Inside the canyon was a completely different world. Murong Yu felt as if he had passed through a thin membrane. In the next moment, he had entered another world. This should be the ruins. Murong Yu sized up the ruins and found that it was no different from the immortal plane outside. Murong Yu did not encounter a single immortal in the vicinity. The immortals who entered the ruins must have been randomly teleported to different places. Woof, where should we go? Seeing the ruins that were similar to the outside world, the large black dog could not help but bark. These ruins should belong to an ancient sect. If there are treasures in the ruins, they should be in the sect's main building. Let's find the sect's location first, Murong Yu said as he looked around. The immortal spirit chi in the ruins is much denser than in the immortal plane outside. There must be an immortal meridian here. At this moment, Hichu's voice suddenly sounded in Murong Yu's mind. Immortal meridian? Murong Yu's heart stirred. To him, cultivation techniques and divine weapons were not that important. After all, Murong Yu did not lack cultivation techniques at the moment. He did have a need for divine weapons and magic treasures. But now, the immortal meridian was the most important thing to him. With the immortal meridian, Murong Yu could concoct large amounts of immortal expansion pills, and he could also speed up Hichu Luoshu's cultivation and even break through. Let's go find the immortal meridian first. Murong Yu immediately turned around and flew toward the mountains. There really is an immortal meridian here. Murong Yu felt the immortal spirit chi become denser and denser as he walked, and he could not help but be pleasantly surprised. However, at the same time, he also encountered some other immortals. It was obvious that these people were after the immortal meridian in the ruins. After walking for an unknown period of time, Murong Yu felt the immortal spirit chi become denser and denser. The immortal spirit chi here is very dense. That immortal meridian should be nearby, Hichu said to Murong Yu. Murong Yu nodded and began to survey the surroundings. Rumble. At this moment, a series of loud sounds suddenly came from ahead, accompanied by waves of powerful fluctuations. There were people fighting in front. Murong Yu's heart skipped a beat. He lifted his body and shot toward the source of the sound. Oh no! When Murong Yu turned around a mountain and saw the group of people in front, Murong Yu knew that things were not going well. There was no one fighting in front. The reason why there was such a powerful fluctuation was because the group of people was currently destroying the mountain in front of them. By the time Murong Yu saw them, the mountain had already been smashed apart by them. They had created a huge crater in the depths of the mountain. An incomparably dense, immortal spiritual energy was being emitted from the deep pit. The immortal meridian that Murong Yu was looking for was on this mountain, but it had already been taken by someone else. They were taking the immortal meridian. Murong Yu hid in a corner and looked at these people with a gloomy expression. These people were generally not strong. The strongest should be at the exalted immortal realm. There should not be any golden immortals. However, they had the advantage in numbers. There were more than 100 of them. Even if they were exalted immortals, there were still a dozen or so of them. A dozen or so exalted immortals. Murong Yu looked at them with a dark expression. With his current strength, dealing with a few exalted immortals was completely no problem. However, there were more than a dozen of them. Moreover, there were over 100 heaven immortals remaining. If he was surrounded and attacked by them, Murong Yu would definitely be no match for them. How about it? Should we kill them all? The large black dog asked cautiously as he looked ahead. Murong Yu rolled his eyes. If you have the strength, I'll support you in getting rid of them all. The large black dog smiled sheepishly. Well, I think we should forget about it. Lord Heavenly Dog won't lower himself to their level. Murong Yu looked at the large black dog in disdain. If you don't dare, then just say it. Don't make it sound so dignified. The large black dog glowered at Murong Yu. If you have the ability, then go out and kill them. Murong Yu shrugged. I don't have the strength. However, snatching something from their hands is still somewhat possible. Murong Yu looked at the people in front of him and chuckled. Clearly, he had thought of something else. Seeing Murong Yu smile, the large black dog couldn't help but observe a moment of silence for the people in front of him. You pitiful people are really pitiful. Soon, you'll realize that all of your efforts now are only for the benefit of others. These people are too useless. A dozen exalted immortals are working so hard, yet they still can't collect this immortal vein. Murong Yu and the large black dog were hiding there. After waiting for half a day, they still didn't see these people collect the immortal vein. They couldn't help but feel anxious for them. Finally, after waiting for another half a day, accompanied by an earth-shattering boom, the immortal vein was finally extracted from the ground by these people. It hovered in the void. Shui Bo was an exalted immortal of the Divine Spirit sect. This time, after receiving the news of the relic's appearance, he led a group of brothers and sisters into the relic as soon as possible. However, he also knew that the strongest among them was only an exalted immortal, so they couldn't snatch the immortal vein from others. In addition, the Divine Spirit sect also sent other experts to search for the treasures in the relic. Therefore, he led these brothers and sisters to search for the immortal vein that might exist in the relic. For small sects like them, immortal veins were still something that they could only dream of. Even the Divine Spirit sect didn't have a single immortal vein. If he could collect an immortal vein this time, he would definitely be valued and rewarded by the sect. Perhaps he would have a meteoric rise because of this. In the end, his guess was right. Soon, they found an immortal vein. This time, Shui Bo and the others were excited. They were in a hurry. Moreover, they didn't have any experience in collecting immortal veins. After half a day, they finally managed to extract the immortal vein from the ground. At this time, a dozen exalted immortals were working together to suppress the immortal vein. After suppressing the immortal vein, they could put it in their storage ring and bring it back to the sect. Immortal vein. This is an immortal vein. Haha, I finally see an immortal vein. A heavenly immortal from the Divine Spirit sect laughed excitedly. Our Divine Spirit sect also has an immortal vein. I'm sure our cultivation speed will be much faster in the future. The disciples of the Divine Spirit sect couldn't stop laughing. They were obviously very happy. Shui Bo and the others were also very happy. Shui Bo said excitedly, "Brothers and sisters, let's work harder. This immortal vein is going to be suppressed by us." The dozen or so exalted immortals were excited, and their hands moved faster. Rumble. After a muffled sound, the immortal vein in the sky finally stopped struggling. It was finally suppressed by their combined efforts. Shui Bo laughed and waved his hand in the air. Immediately, the immortal meridian that they had suppressed in the void gradually shrank and slowly flew down towards Shui Bo's palm. This is an immortal vein. Today, we finally have an immortal vein. Shui Bo smiled happily. He exerted force in his hand, about to grab the immortal vein. On behalf of the Black Sieve sect, I thank you all. Thank you for working so hard to subdue this immortal vein. Now, this immortal vein belongs to me, Suda. Just as Shui Bo was about to grab the immortal vein in his hand, he felt a gust of wind sweep past him. Then, the immortal meridian that they had worked so hard to suppress disappeared into thin air. Chapter 389. A figure flashed in front of Shui Bo and the others. At the same time, the immortal meridian that they had worked so hard to suppress had disappeared. Everyone was greatly astonished. They were all in a daze, unable to react. On behalf of the Black Sieve sect, I thank you. Thank you for working so hard to subdue the immortal meridian. Now, this immortal meridian belongs to me, Suda. At the same time, a very annoying voice rang in their ears, making them gnash their teeth in anger. The immortal meridian has been stolen. Finally, Shui Bo was the first to react. He roared and reached out his hand to grab Murong Yu's figure. However, Murong Yu wanted to snatch their immortal meridian. He had already pushed his speed to the limit. With a swoosh, Murong Yu dashed away like lightning after obtaining the immortal meridian. He wanted to break out of the encirclement of Shui Bo and the others. Rumble. Shui Bo was the first to react. He roared and slammed his palm toward Murongyu. However, Murongyu had already dodged. Shui Bo's attack landed on the ground. The terrifying power created a huge pit in the ground. The gravel in the sky exploded and swept in all directions. Damn it, leave that bastard here. At this time, everyone finally came to their senses. After a roar, more than 10 exalted immortals attacked Murongyu at the same time. The heavenly immortals of the Divine Spirit sect also came to their senses and attacked Murongyu. More than 10 exalted immortals attacked in anger at the same time. They sealed off the area and attacked Murongyu. Murongyu's expression changed slightly. He didn't stop using the army formula. At the same time, he waved his hands again and again. The great Vajra wheel seals were sent out by him, covering the sky and covering the earth. Rumble. The power of more than 10 exalted immortals bombarded Murongyu's great Vajra wheel seals. Although the great Vajra wheel seals had unparalleled power, it couldn't withstand the power of the opponents. After a series of loud noises, the great Vajra wheel seals were shattered. Kill him. At this moment, even more energy poured down, intending to tear Murongyu to shreds. Shui Bo, on the other hand, was incomparably furious. Holding an immortal sword in his hand, he charged forward and ruthlessly slashed down at Murongyu. Die! Everyone roared in anger. Their faces were ferocious as they wanted to tear Murongyu to shreds. Outer Lion Seal. Murongyu bellowed furiously. With a push of his hand, he fired out a terrifyingly powerful palm of the Outer Lion, which smashed towards the 2 ascendant immortals standing before him. At the same time, the tree of life in Murongyu's dantian began to tremble violently. The chaotic energy that was drifting in the void like a vast ocean was crazily sucked in. After being converted, it became the purest form of chaotic energy and was replenished in Murongyu's body. The power in Murongyu's meridians was like a raging sea, and it was crazily tumbling. It was being guided by him, and through one move after another, it was extremely terrifying. Rumble. As Murongyu dashed forward, he fired out countless great Vajra wheel seals, which shot up into the sky and smashed in all directions, crushing the power that was coming at him. We must stop him. The 2 ascendant immortals of the Divine Spirit sect roared furiously. In an instant, they raised their power to the limit and attacked the Outer Lion Seal that was coming at them. Boom! Boom! The power of the 2 sides collided violently, and an extremely terrifying power erupted. It shook the void until it was distorted, and the ground was constantly shattered. Puff! Puff! The 2 ascendant immortals spat out blood violently, and their entire bodies were instantly blasted away like broken rags. Their blood was like raindrops sprinkling down from the sky. What a terrifying power! The 2 ascendant immortals looked at each other and saw the horror in each other's eyes. Although their strength was not very strong, they were still ascendant immortals. However, in front of Murongyu, who was only in the early stage of the Heaven Immortal realm, they were so vulnerable. One could imagine how terrifying Murongyu's power was. He was much stronger than them. Just as Murongyu blasted the 2 ascendant immortals away, his great Vajra wheel seal was once again shattered, and the power of the ascendant immortals and the antenna poured down like raindrops from the sky. Hichu Luoshu, Yin-Yang Cauldron. In the end, Murongyu still used these 2 divine objects. The Hichu Luoshu turned into a faint yellow light and hovered around Murongyu's body, surrounding him. Meanwhile, the Yin-Yang fire erupted from the Yin-Yang Cauldron and directly enveloped Murongyu. Chi-Chi, the power that the Divine Spirit sect's disciples poured down on Murongyu and tried to strangle Murongyu, was incinerated by the Yin-Yang fire, emitting a sharp and unpleasant sound. No more power bombarded Murongyu's body or even approached him. What a terrifying fire! Seeing this scene, the disciples of the Divine Spirit sect were all stunned. They were so shocked that they even stopped their attacks. Ha! Murongyu, however, let out a long roar, increased his speed, and directly rushed out of the encirclement. Don't let him get away. Kill him. Shui Bo roared and took the lead to chase after him. The Divine Spirit Sect's disciples also came to their senses and chased after Murong Yu. However, Murong Yu had already escaped from their encirclement. How could these people catch up with Murong Yu's speed when he fully exerted the army formula? Not long after, Murong Yu had already shaken off Shui Bo and the others. Damn it! Seeing that he still couldn't catch up with Murong Yu, Shui Bo immediately cursed, feeling extremely aggrieved. It was not easy to find an immortal meridian, and after working together for half a day, they finally suppressed it. However, in the end, it was all for someone else. Who the hell is that bastard? The Divine Spirit Sect's disciples roared angrily, gnashing their teeth. They couldn't wait to kill Murong Yu. Black Civ Sect, Suda, Shui Bo said, gnashing his teeth. Black Civ Sect. Everyone gnashed their teeth, but then their faces turned gloomy. Although the Black Civ Sect was not in Jiangzhou, the Divine Spirit Sect knew of its existence. Although the Black Civ Sect was also a second-rate sect, it was much more powerful than the Divine Spirit Sect. After all, the Black Civ Sect's patriarch was a perfected golden immortal. He was much more powerful than the Divine Spirit Sect, whose strongest cultivator was only a profound immortal. The Black Civ Sect could easily destroy the Divine Spirit Sect. If the Black Civ Sect really did snatch their immortal meridian, then they could only swallow their broken teeth and swallow their anger. Would they dare to ask the Black Civ Sect for their immortal meridian? If they really did that, they would probably be destroyed by the Black Civ Sect. Senior brother, what should we do? Are we just going to let it go? An exalted immortal looked at Shui Bo angrily. The other disciples of the Divine Spirit Sect also looked at Shui Bo. They were not willing to accept this. Shui Bo's eyes flashed with killing intent. He sneered, "Let it go? That's an immortal meridian. Our Divine Spirit Sect has never had an immortal meridian. This time, we can't just let it go." But he's a disciple of the Black Civ Sect. We can't afford to offend him. An exalted immortal was angry, but also worried. So what if he's a disciple of the Black Civ Sect? No matter how powerful the Black Civ Sect is, he's not from Jiangzhou. Besides, there might not be any other Black Civ Sect disciples in the ruins this time. Even a disciple of the Black Civ Sect will die here. That's right. As long as we report this to the sect, although he's strong, there are golden immortals in our sect who will enter the ruins. When the time comes, we can naturally kill him. An exalted immortal said viciously. Everyone nodded. Not long after, the disciples of the Divine Spirit Sect learned about this. They were furious and issued a warrant for Murong Yu's arrest. However, the ruins were so big, but Murong Yu seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Even the disciples of the Divine Spirit Sect didn't see him again. In the Hichu Luo Shu, Murong Yu directly handed the immortal meridian to Hichu, but didn't refine the immortal ascension pill for the time being. One immortal meridian is still too little. It's far from enough. Murong Yu sighed. One immortal meridian couldn't refine many immortal ascension pills. Besides, Murong Yu needed to speed up his cultivation. As a result, the immortal meridian was far from enough. Since there's one immortal meridian in the ruins, there should be more, Murong Yu muttered. However, there are more and more people entering the ruins now. I believe that many immortal meridian have already been collected. If we want to collect more immortal meridian, we have to speed up. After Murong Yu left the Divine Spirit Sect, he continued to search for immortal meridian in the ruins. As expected, it didn't take long for Murong Yu to discover a second immortal vein, another immortal meridian. Murong Yu laughed loudly and began to collect it. With no one around, Murong Yu began to collect the immortal meridian. Rumble. Murong Yu unleashed his powerful strength and raised the mountain to the ground. Finally, he reached his hand into the ground and grabbed the immortal meridian. You're lucky to find an immortal meridian. Kid, seeing that you found an immortal meridian, I'll spare your life today. Just as Murong Yu suppressed the immortal meridian, and was about to store it in the Hichu Luoshu world, a slightly old voice sounded. Then a big hand shattered the void and grabbed the immortal meridian. Get lost! Morongyu was enraged. With a roar, he threw out a punch. Bang! With a slight tremble of the hand, it shattered Morongyu's fist. At the same time, his hand suddenly stretched out, traversing countless space-time and pressing onto Morongyu's body. Bang! At that moment, Morongyu suffered a heavy blow. All the meridians in his body were shattered. Even his body, which was as strong as a grade 4 immortal artifact, had several cracks and broken bones. Puff! Morongyu spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Chapter 390. You overestimate yourself. An old man flew over at a terrifying speed from afar and appeared where Morongyu was just a moment ago. He first looked at Morongyu with disdain, then slowly took away Morongyu's immortal meridian. Puffed. Morongyu spat out another mouthful of blood. This time, it was not because he was seriously injured, but because he was angry. This was what it meant to be hunted by a wild goose all day and finally be pecked blind by the wild goose. All this time, Morongyu had been the Oriole behind the scenes. At least, in the immortal world, Morongyu had been the Oriole several times. But today, he was treated like a mantis. Today, Morongyu finally knew what it felt like to have something snatched from your hands. Anger. Incomparable anger. He wished he could kill the other party immediately. Murderous intent spread out from Morongyu's body, and a terrifying killing intent rose from the sky. The Tree of Life in his dantian began to operate wildly, and streams of Tree of Life rushed out like an ocean and began to heal Morongyu's injured body. His injuries were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Morongyu struggled to stand up from the ground, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent as he looked at the old man who had snatched his immortal meridian. Feeling Morongyu's soaring, killing intent, the old man could not help but look at Morongyu with disdain, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. He was truly surprised because a mere early-stage heavenly immortal actually dared to reveal killing intent towards him. This was the first time he had met someone like this. However, Morongyu's killing intent was getting sharper and more terrifying. This made the old man frown. The old man looked at Morongyu and suddenly let out a cry of surprise. This was because he discovered that Morongyu, who had been heavily injured by his casual attack, had already recovered by about 5%. Furthermore, his injuries were healing at a terrifying speed. Could it be that this kid has some kind of treasure on him? The old man's eyes narrowed as a cold glint flashed across them. Old man, give me back my immortal meridian. Morongyu slowly walked over. When he was a certain distance away from the old man, he couldn't help but gnash his teeth and glare at the old man. Immortal vein? That's mine. When did it become yours? The old man looked at Morongyu curiously, as if he found it strange. Morongyu was so angry that he almost vomited blood again. This old bastard was simply too shameless. He was simply lying through his teeth. Give me back my immortal meridian. Morongyu roared again. The old man shook his head and looked at Morongyu with disdain. Once something is in my hands, it is impossible to take it back. Hoyin? Was he shameless? Morongyu was infuriated. However, you want the immortal meridian? It's not impossible. How about exchanging it with something on you? Hoyin suddenly revealed a smile as he looked at Morongyu. Give me back my immortal meridian. Morongyu roared again. What kind of joke was this? The immortal meridian was originally his. How could he exchange it with something on him? Morongyu was very angry, but he was quite fearful of this old man. This old bastard probably just casually attacked just now, right? He was able to severely injure his grade 4 immortal artifact body. Even with the terrifying recovery ability of the Tree of Life, his injuries had only recovered a little. To fully recover, it would probably take some time. That old bastard's strength is simply too strong. He's even stronger than those golden immortals. Could it be that he's at the profound immortal realm, which is above the golden immortal realm? If that's really the case, I'm afraid I'm doomed today. Although Murong Yu looked indifferent on the surface, he dared to go against this old man with unfathomable strength. However, he was very meticulous and many thoughts flashed through his mind. As long as his plan succeeded, this old man would definitely die. Murong Yu thought angrily. Kid, your injuries are healing so quickly. Could it be that you have some treasure on you? Why don't you use that treasure to exchange for the immortal meridian? If one is too little, how about two? The old man smiled as he looked at Murong Yu. If one didn't know the relationship between the two, they would have thought that these two were old friends. Who knew that Murong Yu hated this old man to death? Old bastard, return my immortal meridian to me. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. Murong Yu roared again. You're courting death. Ho Yan's eyes flashed fiercely. He reached out his big hand and grabbed at Murong Yu. If that's the case, I'll just snatch it away. Great Vajra Chakra Seal. Although Murong Yu was seriously injured, it didn't affect his strength much. After roaring angrily, he threw out a great Vajra Chakra Seal at the old man's big hand. You're overestimating yourself. Ho Yan sneered disdainfully. He clenched his big hand into a fist and punched the mountain-like handprint. The handprint was immediately shattered. Boom! After shattering the hand seal, Ho Yan's big hand didn't stop at all. It continued to grab at Murong Yu at an extremely fast speed. Great Vajra Chakra Seal. Outer Lion Seal. Two different handprints constantly burst out of the void, trying to strangle Ho Yan's big hand. What a powerful hand seal. This kid is only in the early stage of the fairy immortal realm. The power of his hand seal is probably enough to kill an ordinary exalted immortal. What is this kid's background? However, no matter what his background is, he will definitely die if he meets me today. Yes, I must capture him and force him to give me all his cultivation methods and treasures. Thousands of thoughts flashed through Ho Yan's mind in an instant, but his big hand didn't stop at all. It continued to attack. Murong Yu's great Vajra Chakra Seal and Outer Lion Seal were like paper and were constantly shattered. Old bastard, you're so powerful. Damn it. If I were in your realm, I would definitely kill you with one slap. However, I'm no match for you now, so I'll leave first. I'll come back to settle the score with you later. It's not over between us. Murong Yu kept throwing out two hand seals in an attempt to block Ho Yan's attack. At the same time, he used the soldier formula and his body turned into a stream of light that shot into the distance. Murong Yu didn't hold back at all. Whether it was his attack or speed, he raised it to the limit. However, Ho Yan's strength really shocked him. Even with his maximum strength, he couldn't shake Ho Yan, let alone injure him or even kill him. Good boy, you have such speed. It seems that this trip to the ruins was worth it. Ho Yan laughed loudly. With a wave of his big hand, layers of ripples appeared in the void and shattered billions of space-time. He directly appeared behind Murong Yu and reached out his big hand to capture Murong Yu. Old bastard, you're really capable. Murong Yu turned pale with fright and cursed angrily. He was really shocked. This old man was so powerful. Could he be a golden immortal? However, Murong Yu quickly rejected this idea. Although Ho Yan was powerful, he was definitely not a golden immortal. The aura that Kong Shani burst out was countless times more terrifying than his. In fact, as long as he was an immortal in the golden immortal realm, he could easily kill Murong Yu. Although Ho Yan was strong, he should be in the golden immortal realm or the Xian immortal realm. Kid, why aren't you running anymore? Ho Yan looked at Murong Yu with a teasing expression, but he was extremely happy in his heart. Old bastard, I know what you're planning. However, even if I self-destruct, I won't let you succeed. Murong Yu roared and pretended to self-destruct. If you fall into my hands, you won't be able to self-destruct even if you want to. Ho Yan's face was full of disdain as he continued. Before you self-destruct, I've already extracted your memories. When that time comes, everything you have will be mine. He laughed sinisterly and was about to extract Murong Yu's memories. However, at this moment, a cold light flashed in Murong Yu's eyes, and he sneered. Is that so? Why don't you give it a try? Seeing Murong Yu's eyes, Yin instinctively had a bad premonition. However, he immediately extinguished it. With his strength, how could Yu overturn the heavens? That was definitely enough to suppress him. Yin-yang cauldron, yin-yang fire, burn the world. At this moment, Yu suddenly roared. Boom! The yin-yang cauldron instantly appeared out of thin air, and the yin-yang fire that filled the sky swept in all directions. Almost at the moment Yu took out the yin-yang cauldron, a strong sense of danger flashed in Yan's heart. In shock, he directly threw Yu away. However, how could he avoid Yu's long-planned attack so easily? Whoosh! The yin-yang fire that filled the sky directly drowned the surrounding area. Even though Yan, who reacted quickly, retreated immediately, he was still enveloped by the yin-yang fire. Break! Feeling the terrifying power of the yin-yang fire, Yan's face instantly turned pale. In an instant, he raised his strength to the limit. With a roar, he threw out a punch, trying to force the yin-yang fire to retreat. However, even the power of a golden immortal could be easily burned. How could he, a mere Yan who had not reached the golden immortal realm, blast open the encirclement of the yin-yang fire? With a punch, the power directly burned. At this moment, the yin-yang fire was quickly burning towards him. It wanted to burn him to ashes. Explode, explode, explode. Seeing the urgent situation, Yan gritted his teeth and roared. Suddenly, rays of bright light burst out continuously, and waves of terrifying pressure burst out fiercely. Boom! The yin-yang fire that could burn the entire world was actually blasted open by these violent explosions. Yan also took the opportunity to rush out of this crack, and soon disappeared into the distance. Puff! Yu spat out a mouthful of blood, and his whole body collapsed on the ground. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.